Hey, welcome everybody. So I kind of found out what we're going to be doing a discussion on. Well, actually, they're going to be doing a discussion on. I'm just going to kind of hang out for about 20, 30 minutes and then kind
I
of
can't
jump
hear you,
in.
Steve, if you're talking.
Oh, you
Are you
guys
still
can't hear
muted?
me. Well, yeah, they can hear me on the outside.
Okay.
Okay, sorry about that. So I didn't know what you guys really wanted to talk about, so I just recently found out what the guys want to talk about. It is going to be on wearing these things. And by the way, the one person who's advocating for them is not wearing one now.
I'm living
Yeah,
dangerously.
not to throw you under the bus like anything, but
No.
whatever. So let me kind of give a rundown what was going on to kind of set you guys up for this. First of all, this is the TruePooka down here.
TruePooka.
TruePooka. And this is, of course, Sye Ten Bruggencate. Most people know him. He's rather infamous for whatever reasons. Good, bad, or indifferent, but I happen to
Probably
like the
mostly
guy.
for being a dick, but you know.
Oh, shots fired already, man. This is going to be fun.
Yeah.
So you guys were on Twitter, and you guys were basically having a spat, I guess, for lack of a better. I'm gonna take this off so people can hear me. You guys were having a spat on basically whether we should wear a mask. And I, by the way, I had a show on the other night on religious freedoms with Chris Attlee, which is the known as the atheist pastor on Over and Under. Go watch it, guys. It was a great episode, and we talked about this very thing. Matter of fact, Sye was in the live chat, which I thought, but I wasn't sure. But whatever. But you guys were like really going at it hot and heavy. You guys want to have actually a one-on-one kind of discussion, or at least like a round table at some point. So I'm going to kind of turn over to you guys. I'm going to mute so you guys can't hear my AC because it's very hot and I'm very tired. But I'm going to turn over to the TruePooka. Is that Puka, right?
Yeah, it's Pooka.
Puka. And then
I figured Sye could start.
Oh, you want Sye to start?
I know
Okay.
he had some
Sure.
complaints.
No,
I
I'd be,
don't,
I'd be, I'd be
Hey,
happy to.
whatever makes you guys happy. I'm here to make you guys
Yeah.
happy. Go ahead.
I'd be happy to start. First of all, this has nothing to do with masks. Phil, I don't know. Are you going to try to conceal your real name, Phil, or
Philip. I prefer Philip. But,
Philip?
yeah.
Okay.
But you can call me Pooka. Everybody calls me Pooka.
Yeah, I'm not calling you Pook.
Pooka.
So Philip.
Well, actually, if I said I want you to call me Pooka, I would expect you to respect that. But if you want to call me Philip, I'm okay with that.
Happy to.
Whatever
I
makes you guys
appreciate that.
happy. I'm here to
Yeah.
make
All
you
right,
guys happy. Go ahead.
I'm happy to start. First of all, this has somehow just recently he came up out of the blue and accused me of having to back down from 3 different challenges to engage him. Now, I have no idea what he's talking about. Now, he's talking about something back in 2012. I don't know anything about that. The one incident that he did bring up was supposedly back in 2014, where I was supposedly at some convention in Salt Lake City. I haven't been in Salt Lake City. The first time in my life I was there last year, and he recognized that he was mistaken there. It wasn't me. And he sort of retracted on Facebook. But he hasn't come up and said, where I've ever backed down from him. I've never backed down from Phil, from Philip. Never backed down. But he has been wanting to engage me for quite some time. And I did a debate recently with Dr. Matt Hunt, and he seemed to make it over masks instead of worldviews. Now, the issue of masks is irrelevant if you cannot justify the preconditions of intelligibility according to your own worldview. So that's something that, that I would discuss among Christians who have that justification. Philip doesn't. But for him to make this about masks, and I don't think he's going to make it about masks. I hope he's not going to make it about masks. That just came up very recently. He says that I've been dodging him since, I think, 2012. So I want to know what his issue is with me, and I'd be happy to have a discussion about that and our respective worldviews and who can make sense of what we're doing here today.
So if we want to get into the background on that, because it's not exactly an accurate representation of what happened. So Sye, you posted a tweet saying that you had never backed down from any debate. And I pointed out that we had a arranged debate that was discussed doing at the YouTube studio I was working out of in Manhattan. And this is back in 2012, I think, like you said. I don't remember the exact date. So at the time, you had canceled because of a storm. And this, by the way, I apologize to everybody because this is stupid and boring, but since it was brought up, I guess I'll go over it. But at the time, because of the storm, you had not made the trip. So I said, okay, fine, we'll do it after. And then you never followed up. And then a couple of years later, it came up again. And again, you didn't follow up. And I had said on Twitter to you, well, if you never back down, why did that never happen? And then you said, I don't remember. And I said, well, that's a reasonable statement because you basically will debate any Tom, Dick, or Harry who's out there from what I've seen. I have no idea, especially back then, how many of these you were doing in a week. So it's not unreasonable to me for you to say, I don't remember. And you saying, I don't back down. I said, well, that is not an unreasonable statement too. So I said publicly, sure, possibly you didn't back down. I can see that. I see no reason to go through the bullshit of pulling up old emails to prove one thing or the other. It strikes me as stupid and pointless and not important. And I don't know, you're a Canadian. You might have been doing Canadian things, whatever weird shit you guys get up to there. I have no idea. So maybe you got distracted. So I did say that live, well, on Twitter. I did say, yeah, you know what? Fine. Possibly didn't back down. As far as me being obsessed with wanting to engage you, I actually hadn't seen Heidner hair review in 6 or 7 years. I'd forgotten about you until somebody retweeted that tweet and we brought that up. And yeah, it definitely was initially, the conversation was about masks. It was about actually COVID and masks and what is happening in the world. But if you want to have a discussion along with that of an epistemic nature, yeah, I guess we could do that. I have no problem. Like, wow, I did not see that coming, that you were going to bring that up. You totally caught me there. So yeah, we could do that if you want.
But just a point of order, you guys were, to get it out of the way, Sye, you did have a tweet where it was kind of confusing about your position on opening of churches, whether they should have masks, whether they should open at all. I think you guys should address that before you move into anything epistemically, don't you?
Yeah, there was another tweet as well.
No, but the thing is, I have those conversations internally among believers. I don't mind expressing my view to the public, but that has nothing to do with Phil. This has to do with him saying that I backed down from engagements. Now, thankfully, he's retracted that. Well, to some degree. I mean, people could see that he's not really retracting. He's kind of sort of retracting it. He says he doesn't want to go into history to look for old emails. The internet is forever. Things that are out there forever. If we've had this exchange, surely he could find evidence of it. I suspect that he can't. The only one that he could remember, he actually realized that it wasn't me. So of the two of us, the only one who was evidentially having a faulty memory, it's him, and it's not me. So as far as masks go, like I say, I don't mind having this discussion with you at some point, Steve. But with this fellow, I didn't say he was obsessed with me, but he does seem to be trolling me on Twitter. And the thing is, he's misrepresenting me. He's lying about what I say. He's lying about having backed down from him. So I have very few rules as to who I block on things like Twitter. But if somebody blasphemes God or if they lie about me, those are two pretty good indications of blocking people. I see that, Steve, anyways, you've been quite good at blocking people who do the same.
Oh yeah, no, I don't judge you for that at all. No.
I'm saying
I do the same thing. Sure,
well.
Sure, yeah.
And I think that shortly after this, I'll probably end up blocking Phil for lying about me. But he wanted to have me on, and I don't back down. So I'm more than happy to see why he wanted to have me on prior to this mask thing.
All right.
Because he says this has been going on since 2012. So what does he want to talk about?
All right, Philip, go ahead. What you have him here? So what is your discussion?
Yeah, so I don't understand how you can say you can know anything as far as your worldview goes if you can't even tell the difference between a lie and somebody making an assertion based on their knowledge and experience. That statement I made was based on my knowledge and experience at the time. Now you say you didn't back down. I have no problem accepting that. But the fact that you can't tell the difference between a lie and somebody making a statement based on experience, I mean, that's troubling.
Well, you're uttering a falsehood.
Oh, really?
Is that not fair? Yes.
How is it a falsehood?
You uttered a falsehood about me being in Salt Lake City. Is that not fair?
That actually, yes, I was wrong about, but that has nothing to do with the issue of you backing down. That's at that point, you're doing a poisoning the well fallacy by bringing that up, and you're trying to insinuate that by me saying that you were there when I was incorrect, and I actually checked, and I was like, yes, it wasn't you, it was some other guy, and I'm thankful it wasn't you because that guy was weird as fuck.
You uttered a falsehood.
Okay, so what does that have to do with the other statement I said?
What other statement?
And that's not a falsehood. I mean, that's a falsehood. That's not a lie. Right. That's a falsehood. That was me getting information improperly. So that's not a lie. No, it's not semantics.
Sure it is.
A lie is an intentional attempt to deceive. There was no intent to deceive there. That was just me getting information wrong. And the fact that you can't tell the difference between those two.
Give him a little bit of principle of charity. It was a misunderstanding. He corrected it. I wouldn't say it's a lie, but it definitely is.
Well, no, but the thing is, he utters other things on Twitter as well about my position that are clearly false. He fabricates things. Well, I'm not going to go to Twitter right now. I could do that if you want. But
all right.
But this discussion, I just want to know, I mean, it's not about our recent exchange. You've been wanting to talk to me for 8 years. What do you want to talk about?
Well, I haven't actually been wanting to talk to you for 8 years. Like I said, I forgot about you for a good 6 years, and then this came up. Now, what I wanted to discuss was your position on masks and the things you were saying, because you were being kind of coy and just like 1 foot in the pool and playing at the whole anti-mask thing. You even linked that one video, Truth in Media, and as a response to one of my statements about the efficiency of the efficacy of masks. And that video, like I watched 1 minute of it, and it starts out with a false equivocation on the politicizing of COVID, and then it goes straight into a statistical fallacy in misrepresenting the statistics presented in the study and how that applies to the current situation and people using masks, as in the general public, not doctors or nurse practitioners. And
Okay.
that I found troubling, that you would just link that casually, which shows you're not even aware of what you're linking. You're not even like using your reason to look at it.
Okay, Phil, you cite logic, you cite reason. Now, my question to you is, on what basis do you trust the cognitive faculties you're using to determine that anything is logically fallacious? On what basis do you trust the validity of your cognitive faculties?
Okay, so are you basically now switching into a discussion on propositional knowledge as opposed to procedural or acquaintance knowledge? Because that seems like you're doing.
What part of my question do you not understand?
I'm asking you if that's what you're doing. If we're having an epistemic discussion on knowledge.
No, I'm asking you, you make a lot of claims about logic, about knowledge. I'm asking you on what basis you trust the validity of your cognitive faculties.
All right, so from a procedural or acquaintance knowledge basis, I trust it based on the evidence that I have gathered, the competency from the experience I've had, and the learning.
Okay, in that process, do you employ your cognitive faculties?
Yes.
On what basis, then, do you trust the validity of the cognitive faculties you're using when you do that?
See, this sounds to me like you're shifting the goalposts to an epistemic propositional knowledge debate when you keep asking that question over and over again. Because what we normally do, let me finish. What everybody does in life is that they use essentially their 5 senses. They use their reasoning ability to examine the world around them, to take in data and information, and they come to conclusions based on that. That's how everybody operates, regardless. And that's what I do. And I base my trust of what I do, my cognitive faculties, as you put it, on the results I get.
Right.
And so far, the results have been fairly good. Not always, but most of the time.
But in obtaining those results, you are trusting your cognitive faculties. Is that not correct?
Yes, it is.
On what basis?
I just answered that question.
You answered viciously circular. You're trusting.
No, it's actually a virtuously circular.
Okay. On what basis?
What you're doing is a vicious inquiry of that right now.
Okay, on what basis do you first trust the validity of your cognitive faculties when you first enter into the process of validating them? On what basis do you first trust them?
I already answered this question.
No.
You're just rewording the question a different way.
Right.
Do you know what a PID loop is?
Listen.
I asked you a question. I'm asking.
I realize that.
But do you know what a PID loop is?
I'm asking you to justify the validity of your cognitive faculties.
Yeah, and I'm trying to answer that. I'm trying to answer your question in the way that you might understand it. That's why I'm asking you if you know what a PID loop is. You should know this.
All you've given me is a vicious circle.
So you're not going to answer the question on what you know what a PID loop is.
Pizza sleeps fast under the west, therefore the much.
Okay, so in other words, you don't know what a PID loop is. And you were in boiler controls, right? That's your position. You're in boiler controls.
What is wrong with my answer? How is that a non-answer?
It's a simple yes or no question.
How is that a
know it or you don't?
Penguin.
Okay, so a PID loop, for those who don't know, this is a proportional integral derivative loop, which is used in controllers. Now, I asked you this question because you're a boiler operator, right? So you should actually know this according to your own logic, that you have to know essentially the core of everything you know, because that's kind of what you're implying here, that you have to know the original position from which everything starts right up to the line of your reasoning, up to the very point where you're making a decision on something. So as a boiler operator, you are doing your job without full knowledge of how the operation works. So I'd ask you, how the hell could you do your job not knowing that simple question?
Listen, All you've given me is a viciously circular answer. I'm just asking you how you justify the validity of your cognitive faculties, and you say you use them to justify them. That's a vicious circle.
Why don't you explain to us what a viciously circular answer is?
Assuming what is to be proven in the proof.
Okay, what is a virtuous circular?
Listen, this is a conversation that I have with people who can justify intelligibility. You can't. So, Steve, if you want to open it up at this point, I'm happy to, because I think that we've
well, at this point, look, at this point, you're just saying the same thing over and over again when I'm giving you an answer.
Exposing
the answer I'm giving you is reasonably justifiable. You are jumping back and forth between procedural and propositional knowledge. That's what you're doing. You're trying to use you're trying to use the latter in order to use it as a sledgehammer to basically just whack away any answer or any virtuous inquiry. That's what you're doing here. And it's what you've been doing for 10 years, obviously, because you haven't changed your style in all that time.
Are you saying that you are not employing your reason to justify the validity of your reasoning? All right, Steve.
All right.
We're actually not done. I was going to ask you now, in the Twitter exchange we had, we were talking about COVID and masks, and you brought up the issue of what is the cause for this, cause versus reason. So why did you do that?
Pizza sleeps fast under the West, therefore the much.
So giving gibberish isn't okay. Steve,
well,
let me ask Steve a question now. Steve, did you understand what he said? Was that a
no? But what he's trying to do. Okay, so there's something about. Okay, have you heard of color screening idea? Sleep furiously.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so it's that he's just basically
trying
to show you grammatically correct sentence.
And the fact that you're aware of that shows that he's just essentially.
No, there's no Chomsky actually that said that, but yeah. This is his variant of that.
I know it is. I'm aware of what he's doing.
Okay.
And my point is that essentially he's trying to do gibberish language in order to show that reasoning processes don't work. But the fact that everybody in the chat here obviously understands what he's doing, you understand what he's doing, shows a flaw in that thinking, and it shows it's stupid.
It is kind of an obfuscation. I mean, it is.
You're all created in the image of God. That's why you know that it's that's why you know that it's false.
Thank you. No, okay, this is something useful.
Okay.
Repeat what you said because we were talking over you.
I said you're all created in the image of God. That's why you know what I said is gibberish. But I can justify it as gibberish. You can't.
Okay, so what is your reason for justifying that? Essentially, you're saying our knowledge comes from God.
Pizza sleeps fast under the West, therefore the much.
See, this is what I was saying when I said you're just going to duck and you're going to avoid.
Hang on. How is that avoiding? On what basis is that an avoid?
This is getting circular. Let me read the super chats real quick, and then I could try to guide it a little bit. Okay, so Helios says, Sye is going to go straight to his, if you don't believe in God, you have no ability to know anything until you prove that. I won't engage you for $5. I think he's pretty much right on that, as you think, Sye. That kind of seems what you're doing. I mean,
no, that's fair. The thing is, I just recently had a conversation with your friendly neighborhood atheist. It was a wonderful conversation.
Mm-hmm, I know it is. Sure.
He was not trolling me on Twitter. He was not saying that I was backing down from anything. This is a different story with Phil. He's saying that I'm trolling him, saying that I'm backing down from him. So I'm going to have him stick with his epistemology, and I'm going to expose it for the folly that it is.
All right. Well, let me read this other one. Then
we already showed that not to be true.
Well, let me say something.
I'm sorry, but he's basing his attitude in this.
Okay, fine.
On a falsehood.
Let me interject. Let me finish the super chats real quick. But I have an interjection for both of you. God's auditor says for $5. Phil, quote, let's talk about mass, Sye. Okay, sounds good. So on the subject of presuppositionism, okay, so let me do this real quick. I'm not going to get, the people are asking me to kind of explain it. I'm not going to get into that right now because you guys are heavy in the dialogue, but I will say this, at least for this session or whatever, give each other a little bit of a principle of charity, a little bit of cooperative principle that you guys are both interlocutors are coming in to have a discussion and both so want to have a rational discourse. That's been my position. I get it. Let's just say, let's just set aside any preconceived notions of what happened prior coming in of who's going to be dishonest or who's lied or who's misrepresented. It doesn't really matter. We're having a discussion now. Just for the sake of this discussion, Sye, just let him ask his questions and maybe try to answer them with honest discourse.
I'm not going to grant him the tools of Jesus Christ to argue against Jesus Christ. I refuse to do that.
But do you need Jesus to have an honest and
my world does not allow that.
If this is a real conversation, what I would do at this point is I would actually do an inquiry into your statement about what you said, where in order to have knowledge, essentially we're saying what you have, in order to have knowledge, it has to come from God, because that's actually something that can be addressed. But if you're just going to obfuscate, there's no point in this continuing.
But you understand, Phil, that when I answer as I do, you have to have the basis for saying that what I'm saying is nonsensical. And that's what I'm asking. And if you can't provide that basis, then you can't say that what I'm saying is nonsensical, but you insist that it is, because you have an absolute standard that you cannot justify without God. That's my point.
Okay, so if that's your point, can we address that instead of you being silly? Because that's what you've been doing until now.
When you address it and you appeal to absolute laws of logic, on what basis do you assume that your cognitive faculties are operating properly when you do that?
Okay, actually, that wasn't what I was going to address. I was going to ask
Of course not, because you can't answer it.
Well, I would like to get to that after I addressed your initial statement. It's just you're jumping ahead. You're putting the cart before the horse here. So your statement is that in order to know anything, it has to come from God. So you believe in special revelation, that you have to accept Jesus in order to know anything. Is that correct? Is that a reasonable summation of what you're saying?
Pizza sleeps fast under the West, therefore the much.
If you're going to obfuscate, then we can't have a conversation.
How is that obfuscation? On what basis? What is your absolute standard of logic and reason by which you call that obfuscation? You have to get there. You can't get there without God.
Yeah, we actually can get there without you saying that. That's just you not wanting to answer the question.
We could talk about mass or anything, but you have to justify your ability to do so.
Okay, so you're not going to answer the question of whether or not in order to know anything. No, you actually didn't. You obfuscated again.
Based on what standard?
If you can answer the question, we can have a conversation.
I did answer the question.
Do you? No, you didn't. Special revelation, general revelation. What do you need in order to get the answer from God?
Pizza sleeps fast under the West, therefore the much.
Steve, I think we're done with this part of the conversation. I mean, if you want to move on, and have a conversation about masks or COVID-19,
I don't think there's been a conversation so far. This is not a conversation.
It's been a joke, and this is why I didn't really want to do this. I said I'd do it because I agreed to do it, but in the end run, I've seen what Sye's done, and he does his stuff, and it's silly. And this is the thing that's frustrating. Like, I have no actual problem with Christian presuppositionalism in the sense of, if that's what you want to have for your belief, that's fine, man. You do whatever you want. It's when you start making claims and demands on other people's that I have a problem, or when you do this kind of vicious crap where you have this kind of argumentation. It's the short bus version of philosophy. It's the only way I know how to put it.
Look, okay, so you guys both agree with a vicious circularity, right? I mean, Sye was right. If you can derive a conclusion from a single premise, it's a circular argument, right? You're begging the question.
Yeah, I have no problem with the
idea.
I have a problem defining it as virtuous versus vicious, because I personally think he's vicious in his defining it, in his enactment.
Okay, well, let's talk about a vicious one real quick, and this isn't exactly probably the best argument, but the way Sye argues this, he'll try to explain or ask you, like, how do you use your reason without using your reason, right? That's something that Sye would actually ask, which is actually basically saying, how do you do a push-up without using your arms? You can't. You have to use reason as a foundation to even begin to use your reason. What Sye does is he puts God ahead of that. He says God is the foundation for everything.
I get that.
Right. So all you have to do. Well, hang on.
That's the problem.
Right, but all you have to do is say, I don't need God as my foundation. I'm using reason. I'm presupposing reason, right? I mean, you're taking it axiomatically, classical foundationism or whatever, but you're just taking it as a probably basic belief, or Wittgenstein would probably call them hinge beliefs. But you just say, look, I'm assuming my reason, my faculties work for right now for the sake of this argument. Let's just go with it. There you go.
I said that 15 minutes ago, but he didn't want to accept it.
Do you accept that he uses reason he uses his reason for reasoning? It's not a justification.
I said that's the basic principle.
Because you can't justify that. But
that's why I brought up his using the cause versus reason on Twitter.
Okay.
Because I was going to make the point that even in examining cause, you're using your reason to do that.
Would you admit that there are people who have faulty reasoning?
Of course.
How do you know you're not one of those people?
How I operate in daily life, and whether or not I'm conflicting with the majority of society and having issues.
So you use your reason to make that determination?
Of course, just like you have to use your reason to make your determinations. We're both in the same boat there.
It's a vicious circle.
Well, actually, I think it's a virtuous circle.
No,
because I'm not interjecting additional propaganda and bullshit into it like you do. And I'm sorry, I don't want to call let me just rephrase that, in the sense that just because you're using God, I'm not saying it's bullshit. I'm just saying the crap that you're doing right now is bullshit.
Well, the thing is,
like, if you want to accept God as like the source of of your reason and intelligence. And I'm like, okay, fine. My attitude is it's possible, but I see no evidence for that. It could just as easily be another source. It could be organic. We don't necessarily know, and we might never know.
So you live on blind faith?
No, I live on the faith in my reasoning processes that which is not blind.
Which you cannot justify.
So you can justify yours. I'm just curious.
If you want to say that your belief is properly basic, your belief in the validity of your reasoning, anybody with invalid reason could say the same thing. And it would logically follow that a person with invalid reason could not know that there's such a person, because you would need valid reason in order to determine that you're a person with invalid reasoning. So if you were such a person with invalid reason, you could never know it. And since you admitted that there are such people, you don't have an escape from that circle. I do.
Yeah, but you don't actually have an escape, because you're using the same reasoning. You're using the same reasoning processes, the same five senses, in order to process the information you're getting on God. So you're actually in the same boat that I am. The only difference is that you're adding the addition of your biblical text as a source of your reason. So that's basically, it's vicious, because even if your biblical text contradicts what you're directly observing, then your choice is to, hey, Alexa, shut the fuck up. So, sorry about that. So if you're... Oh, man.
Alexis wanted.
That's the best interjection in the entire debate. Holy shit!
Yeah, Alexis wants to.
You know what she's saying? She's saying she's reminding me to take your fucking supplements, but she won't say fuck. So, Alexa, stop. So, what the hell is it? Oh yeah, I was saying. So you're basically in the same boat. The only difference is that you're adding the layer of the Bible in that, and it becomes vicious when it's in direct conflict with what you're observing in the world. So, and the two of them don't meet. They don't mesh.
How do you know that your reasoning about me being in the same boat is valid?
We already went through this. You're going to keep repeating the same question because you're going to try to make it look like there's some weakness there. But we've already had this statement dealt with. We dealt with it 15 minutes ago. You just keep repeating it because you think it's scoring you some kind of showmanship points. But it's getting boring, frankly.
Well, the thing is, I'm not going to move on from a point that you can't answer.
I've already answered it, though.
Other people will be might be happy to do that. I won't.
I know, because you want to be a dick. I get that.
Right.
I'm sorry. Okay, hang on.
No
offense, but it's
no, hang on. So do you think Phil can actually use reason? Do you think he's capable of having actual reason?
He's created in the image of God. Of course he can.
Okay. And you could presuppose that. That's completely your right to presuppose that. But
well, thank you. Very kind of you.
You just answered my other question.
Principle of charity.
You literally just answered my other question without intending.
So
you're saying that general revelation is how we get our reason from God, right? So that right there, that just makes the automatic assumption, well, if you need general revelation to get your reason from God, then you don't need to accept Jesus Christ as your savior, because you don't need that divine revelation. So who cares?
All I'm saying that according to my worldview, you have a basis for adjusting the validity of your reasoning, not according to yours. I can justify your ability to reason. You can't. That's all
I'm taking it at this point that when you say that, when I say something like I just said, that is you acknowledging that you can't answer that question. Because that's how it's coming across to me.
Helios actually just kind of asked this question, so maybe Sye can address it because I already know the answer. But Helios again says, Sye, how do you know that your reason isn't faulty? How do you know that you are not the one who is gibbering in some padded room? This line of questioning is pointless because it is impossible to disprove. So how do you know that your reasoning is correct?
For somebody other than Phil, I have no problem answering giving an answer.
I have a
revelational epistemology. Everything that I know is either by or through revelation from God.
The word of God. Everything. The word of God, right? The Bible.
God reveals things to us such that we can know them for certain.
And you believe that's through the Bible, right?
You're just contradicting yourself.
He reveals it through his Bible, through nature, innately. He reveals.
You're contradicting yourself. You just said you only need general revelation. And now you're saying you need special revelation in order to know. So that's a contradiction. Well, you didn't. When I said it, you didn't say anything in response to it. So it's one or the other. If it's special revelation, then just by examining the world around you, just by interacting with other people, we know that can't be the case, because there's a lot of non-Christians out there. There's Muslims, there's Jews, there's Hindus, and they're moving through the world and doing fine without this special revelation from God and Jesus. So right there, we know that your point of view doesn't work. Like if you went with general revelation, I'd be like, yeah, sure, I have no problem with that, as far as you can make a reasonable argument for it. But for special revelation, it just falls apart.
How do you know that your reasoning about that is valid?
Thank you for acknowledging the point.
Well, let's clarify that. So Sye, you are saying then, like with Helios' question, you are saying that the reason why you don't think you're the one that has faculties that are impaired, that is because God is letting you know that is not the case through His Word somehow. Is that correct?
I would say that God justifies our ability to reason to rational conclusions, all of us.
Okay, but if that was the case, that you were the one that was in a padded room, you were having delusions, would God let you know this?
I believe He lets us know that we're not such people.
Okay. What about the people who are?
I can't speak for them.
Okay, even if they're Christians and they've accepted Christ, how does God let them know their faculties are impaired?
I cannot speak for
Okay.
them.
So Superstore Energy says for $5, how does Sye know God isn't sending deceitful spirits to him like He did to the people in the Old Testament, which did happen? I think He sent was it dreams states or dreams to people? How do you know God isn't sending deceitful spirits to you?
Because He never did it to His elect.
Okay, so the Calvinist elect, He never did it to. Okay.
There's only one kind, man.
Okay. Yeah, by the way, it's so off topic, but it's so interesting that every Calvinist I ever met, except for one, has prayed about being elect, and they've all got the answer they're elect, except for one. He's like, I prayed, and God said I was reprobate. I'm like, that's interesting. It doesn't happen very often, right? They all seem to be elect. Okay.
I would deny that fellow's revelation.
I actually like Calvinism as an idea. It's like the idea that, there's only so many people who are elect, and you're just working on the assumption, well, I'm one of them, so, or I'm not, so I'm just going to do what I'm going to do and hope for the best. That's kind of, and there's kind of like a dark kind of attitude there that I can appreciate as a Jew. So,
you one of my people?
Yeah, you didn't catch that? Yeah.
Well, okay.
Yeah. Hey.
I'll make some matzo bra. Have some gefilte fish. Good First Authority Street. Atheist linguist for $10 says any supposed revelation you could possibly have, divine or otherwise, is inevitably going to be filtered through senses that you just have to assume are trustworthy. No God can change that. That's what we would call what's called sense data, right? Yeah. So as we perceive the world, we filter it through sense data that only is subjective of us, right? We can't experience somebody else's sense data. Right.
Yeah, I was trying to get there.
Okay. So he's right on that.
That's begging the question. That's begging the question that God cannot use our sense and reasoning to reveal things to us. Certainly, that's just begging the question.
No, that's you appealing to divine revelation again. I mean, to special revelation again. I'm sorry, but every time you say that you need God, that you need to accept God.
Is it impossible for God to use our sense and reasoning to reveal things to us? Certainly.
Are you asking the person in the chat, or are you asking me? I'm not clear.
Well, I can't talk to the person in the chat.
He's asking me.
Well, you actually are. They're hearing you, and they're responding.
I'm talking to you. You made a statement, and I responded to your statement with a question.
Okay, if God wanted to, yeah, sure. It's in the Bible. I mean, I'm sorry, it's in the Tanakh. He actually does that at one point. He misleads one of the kings in his mind so that to convince him to do an attack.
But you're convinced that God is not.
In the early portion of the Tanakh, there's a whole series of stories with Abraham and his wife, where they're traveling, and essentially God is tricking the kings of countries into going after Abraham's wife, and then when they do it, God shows up, or rather Abraham, representing God, is just like, hey, God's here and he's going to screw you up for doing that. It's like a whole line of thing. It's a really fun storyline. So yeah, I mean, it's in the Tanakh.
But you're just going to say that you're convinced God has told you otherwise, that it's not the case, right, Sye?
Sorry, has told me what?
That you're not suffering from delusions. God is not sending you delusional spirits.
Well, according to Scripture, I can know whether I'm saved, and He does not do that to His elect. That's what Scripture teaches us.
So in other words, you can't know anything unless you have special revelation. I'm sorry, that's just
that would be special, not general.
Yeah, that's an.
If God's giving you special knowledge that you are not delusion, that's not general.
You can make that claim, Phil. But then I asked you, how do you know anything? How do you know anything to be true? A necessary element of knowledge is truth, and I would ask you to define truth. What is truth according to your worldview?
So, if I was a believer like you are, I would go the route of general revelation. Well, I'm answering the question in the context of what we're talking about. From general revelation, I would be like, well, we have the ability to know because God gave it to us, And whether or not we don't, that depends on our reasoning, whether it becomes faulty. But from a believer point of view, that's how I would do it. I would use God as the original source. I would never go special revelation, because that's just, crazy talk to me. I'm sorry, but it's just like, you just look at the world around you and interact with people, and you can see that can't be the case. The only way that could be true is if you start sliding into solipsism. And at that point, you're doing a solipsistic panic, because you don't want to deal with the idea that we can use reason. And that's what you're doing at that point when you do divine special revelation.
Okay, what is truth according to your worldview?
Are you talking epistemically, or you're talking general knowledge? I'm going to answer general knowledge. I'm not going to ask you, because you're just going to say whatever.
Define truth.
From a general knowledge perspective, truth is that which I examine, and the evidence shows me that it has the appearance of truth.
Okay, so truth is that which corresponds to reality. Is that fair?
Yes.
How do you know what's real?
We already went through this.
Right.
The first 15 minutes. Now you're just coming back. I
Right.
mean, if you want to drop out and Steve and I can have a conversation.
Hey, no, look, I tend to
we can do that, but it's like,
I-
apparently you're not here to actually have a virtuous.
Look, I tend to
just wanna do a
deflationary
vicious
theories.
one.
What he's talking about correspondence theory, and I tend to deflationary theories where there's no truth maker, so it
Yeah,
has
I
nothing
know,
it has
and I
nothing to do with
just-
reality. So we probably don't have the same version of what true is, because there's.
I knew
true means nothing in deflationary
I knew it was
theories,
going
right?
to go along
yeah.
this way. I mean, like I watched the interview with you and Matt. I saw what you did there. Like that led up to the interview with Matt, where he was having a conversation with Matt this is Dr. Matt Hunt on Twitter, and they were discussing, I believe it was masks and COVID-19.
Well, let's ask this.
And he pulled. Well, the point here is that I'm saying is he pulled him into an interview with the room with the other guy, the TDS guy, and he proceeded to immediately hit him with this. And I'm watching, and I'm just like, how do you even consider this a victory? I mean, is this what you do? You basically pull unsuspecting people into a conversation so they're unprepared to have a discussion about worldview. It's like, really good, great. You beat somebody who's unprepared. That's a real skill.
Are you saying that you're unsuspecting?
No, I'm saying he was. So I was prepared, but I also knew that
I've been asking him a question about worldview for 3 years. You can look at our Twitter feed. It's still up there.
You've been asking it longer than that, haven't you? Since you weren't doing this since 2010?
I've been asking him the question since he started trolling me about 3 years ago. I can only find
like I said,
evidence of him
He was
trolling
asking
me.
it for 3 years, but the conversation he went into wasn't one expecting that he was going to be dealing with. Now, granted, I will give you caveat that after 3 years of him engaging you, he probably should have been prepared for it. But at the same time, it would have been generous of you to say, okay, let's do a conversation. And by the way, yes, we're going to discuss worldview.
Well,
but you didn't do that.
Hang on.
But listen, I looked at your
Steve, I'm sorry.
It's okay.
I looked at your YouTube channel, and you are pro-abortion. So it makes no sense for me to have a conversation with you about masks, since you think that masks are just protecting an advanced clump of cells, which you have no problem killing. So
so you want to discuss abortion?
No, I'm saying it makes no sense to argue over the protection of
that's
a
kind of
clump
poison.
cells.
That's kind of poisoning the well. That has nothing
No.
to do with anything.
He's talking about mass. But according to his atheistic worldview, we're just advanced clumps of cells. And at some point, he says we can kill them, and now he's saying we should protect them with masks. It just doesn't make any sense.
You forgot I'm a Jew and I'm an agnostic, so I'm like, I told you like 3 times on Twitter, and you're just not paying attention.
On your YouTube channel, you say you're an atheist.
Yeah, my YouTube channel dates back to like 2010. It's like I don't make videos anymore. I made one video to one person like 6 months ago. I don't do YouTube
That's probably
anymore.
a good decision.
There's a little bit of a
By the way, what was the
going
thing
on
that
there,
you found most inane on my channel? I took that as a high compliment coming from you. What was the most inane thing on my channel?
The perm.
The perm? Yeah, it was pretty bad. Well, it's not a perm though; it's natural. This is naturally curly hair.
Let's see if we can address some things of substance here. Let's see if we can kind of redirect here. First of all, Dr. Hunt is not a philosopher. He is a mathematician. He does his specialty, I think, is in what is it? Is it solid state stuff that he does? He's a type of mathematician, right? But
Applied mathematics.
Yeah.
Applied mathematics, right? But the point is, like, he asked you what truth is, right? And clearly you had a circular argument of what truth is, a circular explanation. You can't use truth to say what truth is, right? But does it really matter what he defines as truth? Whether he uses truth makers, truth conditionals, it doesn't matter. He accepts certain things that are reality, right? You accept axiomatically that reality is at least something that we experience. Do you not, Phil?
I'm sorry. This is my bad. I got distracted by the chat, and somebody said Puka is a talented moderator, and I immediately felt bad for Steve because he's actually the moderator, and I was just like, I've got to give Steve credit for being the moderator.
This is them too, but I told him this is a
I
free for all.
didn't hear what you said
We don't
because of that,
have
'cause I
debates
immediately
here.
Felt
Yeah.
like outraged that that's
This is not modern day
sorry,
debates channel. This is not. We don't do.
what did you say,
I love
Steve? I'm
James
sorry.
to death, but
That's entirely on me.
yeah, he's a different type of moderator. We have discussions here that we try to facilitate. So my point being is that Philip, you have certain things that you hold to be axiomatically the case, like reality exists, right? That you are experiencing something. Why does he need a deity for that? You are assuming that, you're presupposing that, but does it matter to him whether he needs that deity or not? Because to him, he doesn't have that in his foundations, right? That's not one of his basic beliefs, because I don't think God is a properly basic belief. I know Plantinga argues that, but I think it's more just a basic belief. I don't see anything properly basic about it. But would you agree that he's allowed to have truths? He's allowed to have the assumptions that reality exists, and he's experiencing it just merely as an assumption without the need for a God? Why does he have to have a God for that? Or do that have to have God exist for it, whether he accepts it or not?
You're asking me why he has to have that? Because you can't make sense of it without God.
Why?
Well, you've heard him. It's a viciously circular argument.
No, it's not.
You're jumping back on special revelation.
It's just foundation, and that's all.
That's right. He has no justification for his foundation.
But the justification is foundationalism. Literally, the theory of justification.
Right, which is a vicious circle.
No, it's actually not a vicious circle. It's a gap in knowledge.
So you live on faith.
Reasonable faith.
Yeah, it's a form of faith. Yeah, no, I look, I'm the one that argues atheists have blind faith commitments. I mean, I of course they do. They're the ones that for some reason get triggered by that word, right? But they are blind.
That's probably why Aaron Ra loves you so much.
Oh yeah,
So
right.
You understand the difference.
I love Aaron. I really do. I wish he would like wise up and just like suck it up and admit that I'm right and we could be friends again.
So you understand the difference in the word faith between faith as in like belief.
Pistis.
Yeah, thank you. I was going to go into the whole thing, but essentially faith as in having reasonable faith in the sense of like that I know my wife is going to make me dinner.
That's confidence, yeah.
Yeah, it's a confident kind of faith as opposed to having a faith. As opposed to having faith that is like in direct contradiction of either evidence or with absolutely no evidence. Like that's I'm leaning in the faith of the first portion there as opposed to the second.
But you have blind faith in your ability to evaluate evidence.
Well, it's not blind. It's based on my reason.
Yeah, which you have blind faith in.
No, it's not blind, as I just said. I'm not going to go back and forth in this.
No, the blind faith would be that
I answered the question, and that's all there is to it.
Blind faith would be his position that he accepts reality as real. That would be a blind faith thing. That's fine. I got no issue with that.
Which is the
foundation. What's his foundation? That's his foundations. Once he's got that, he can start building upon that. Super chat real quick. I am Moon for $5. By the way, we love you.
Do I get a cut?
Yeah, you know what? Beer. We're gonna have a beer. I promise you and I will meet one day. You and a few other people. I would love that. I am pro-choice and anti-covfefe. It's not reaching to understand why. Stop with the whataboutisms. She has a kind of a point. Look, he can have positions that are not incongruent with each other, right? I mean, positions to wear a mask have absolutely no relevancy to abortion. I think it is kind of sleazy to kind of mix those two because they're not relevant with each other. Come on.
No, but the thing is, if it has to do with the sanctity of life and protecting life, then they are related. And I'm not going to take my advice from somebody to protect life for somebody who has no problem with taking life randomly, arbitrarily, murdering.
And yet the pro-life faction in the United States of America has made it very clear they have no problem with sacrificing life as long as they can get the economy back on.
I'm not a pro-lifer.
Road again.
I'm not a pro-lifer.
However you want to put it.
I'm an abolitionist.
Potato.
Big difference.
You're an abolitionist for abortion?
The pro-life movement has been keeping abortion legal in America.
The pro-life movement in America has been fighting.
There's a film out there called "Babies Are Still Murdered Here," in which I am featured. I would urge you to check it out, and it just exposes the problems with the pro-life movement.
So, what's your position as an abolitionist? I'm curious.
That abortion should be abolished.
Okay, and the pro-life movement in America fights fairly explicitly to have it abolished as well.
No, they have heartbeat bills. They have all sorts of legislation that keeps abortion legal.
Yeah. Okay. Now you're not understanding a basic principle of how they operate in America.
I know exactly how they operate.
They're doing a chipping away strategy with their ultimate goal of making it abolished. Okay.
They are supporting legislation which enshrines in law that abortion remain legal.
Yeah, you're doing like an all or nothing attitude, which
that's what an abolitionist is.
Yeah, I know, but you're doing the whole thing of like we're not going to take any steps to get.
Yeah, he literally believes that You believe
that's
that?
like purity test shit, which is basically useless on the legislative level.
Well, he
might as well be
but,
like a Greenpeace, you know.
But let's clarify. So, Sye, you believe, as an abolitionist, you believe there is no justification ever for abortion, right? And I don't know how we got on this topic, whatever. But since we're on it, for
he keeps bringing it up.
Yeah. Well, I know. I know he keeps trying to go into that thing, but
to take innocent life. But I mean, as far as incrementalism, I mean, at the time of the slave trade, I would have been against abortion as well. I would have been an abolitionist then too. If somebody came out with legislation that said anybody darker than this remains a slave and anybody lighter than this is no longer a slave, I would be against that legislation because that would dehumanize those people who are darker. And I will not do that.
So you wouldn't legislatively agree to a bill that would actually increase the rights of slaves in the process of trying to get
How
to
are we
the point
getting
where...
into this topic? I don't know.
Yeah.
This is like weird
because he
rabbit
keeps
holes.
bringing up random topics like this.
He's shifting
bringing
lanes.
up abortion. I think we should actually have a
pick
discussion
a lane here, guys.
And you're basically wrong on that topic.
I value
we can get into it. I have no problem with it.
God's Otter for $2 says, as a deist, God told me he wasn't Jesus. By the way, how could you know? Yeah, I am Moon $5 says, no offense, you have no right to speak on women's rights, so go back to talking your stuffs about other things. Well, I love Moon a lot, but I do think that anybody's right.
How dare she assume my gender? How dare she?
I think anybody
I think it's always
right
awesome when you get three older white dudes.
Right, but you know what? I got no problem with that. Look,
it's like, I
will disagree with Moon on this. We're allowed to do that.
How dare you assume my gender and color?
I've got to point out.
I think
I've had like.
I think
I've had three. I'm sorry, you speak.
I was gonna say, I think the fact that the whole point of having, freedoms is that it doesn't matter if you have women or men, what gender, you're having a discussion. It doesn't matter who the participants are. Now, granted, if you are advocating a certain position, I do think you should have a cross section if all possible. We're not advocating in positions here, so we don't need a representative sample. But I do want to put a special shout out to Nadia Vet Chambers, who's in the audience. I don't know if Sye remembers her, but if it wasn't for her, I wouldn't even have a YouTube channel. So. It's really good to see her. She was the first hangout that I think I've ever went in on YouTube.
Did you see my
hi to her.
Debate? Did you see my abortion debate in Oklahoma, Steve?
I don't think so.
The T-shirt that I had made for it was "My plantation, my choice," with a couple of arms and shackles. That's the argument that he's presenting, or that the person is presenting.
I don't see how that works.
My body, my choice. My plantation, my choice.
But they were slaves. They didn't have a choice.
Either does the baby in the womb.
But
you're presupposing that the baby should have.
Yeah, you're making it into a personhood, right? Which the law has established.
You basically are taking a faith-based belief position that the fetus is the equivalent of a fully human person, and you're entitled to that opinion and that faith-based belief. But that's yours. There's a lot of people out there don't have it. The Jews, for example, don't have that position. So you're basically trying to force your particular religious bent and belief on this on, for example, Jewish people.
Now,
we don't care for.
Being a Jew, do you know why Nazis were allowed to kill Jews in the Second World War?
Why is it always going? What is this?
Because
because anti-abortionists always have to try to bring
because
up
they were deemed to be
Nazis.
subhuman. They were deemed to be subhuman. That's why slaves were allowed to be kept as well, because they were deemed to be subhuman. They didn't have rights. And you're doing the same thing to the unborn.
Yeah, but I'm not, because you can look at the characteristics of a fetus and a fully born person, and you can see.
Okay, let me ask you a question. At what month do you think that abortion should no longer be allowed?
Me?
Yeah.
I'm for just have it as it's between the doctor and the patient. I have trust in doctors and patients to make decisions for their needs when it comes to their physical and mental well-being. Now, keep in mind that an abortion is not an abortion after a certain point. When you say what month, you're going to hit about 6-7 months, and at that point, you're not doing an abortion. You're actually doing a C-section.
Okay,
so it's an early birth.
But you're saying that prior to 6 months that it should be allowed if the doctor and the patient agree on it.
If the doctor and the patient agree that it is medically necessary, then yes.
No, not medically necessary. Just because most of them are not medically necessary.
According to you, but not according to them.
No, actually, I have anecdotal evidence of a friend of mine who's been sitting outside an abortion clinic in Orlando for almost 9 years, and he talked to the women out there.
On the subway. Not even.
Well, no,
actually,
this is experiential. His name is John Barrows. It's outside the Orlando Women's Center. Anybody can check that out. And he talks to these women, and they are not getting rid of these children for medical reasons. So you're saying that only medical reasons should allow an abortion prior to 16?
Medical includes both physical, physiological, and psychological. So he is actually saying that he does not find their reasons for doing it justifiable under that. That's on him.
So it should be allowed.
I
for
also have a
convenience.
friend, by the way, who works at an abortion clinic as an escort, and in his experience of doing it for 5 years, Stealth Badger, he has a channel. He doesn't do videos anymore, and he does it in DC. Every woman who comes in there, they're doing it out of necessity.
Should it be disallowed for convenience then? They just don't want another child.
I think it's not for us to speak on whether or not it's a matter of convenience. I think at that point you're putting your own preconceptions about the person on them.
If they state that it's a matter of convenience, are you saying it should not be allowed?
If they state it's a matter of convenience?
Yeah, they can't afford it, convenience, whatever. Not medically necessary.
I'm not aware of that really being an issue, and this gets
I'm
into
asking the question.
Okay, so this gets into a case of law where when you have a law that allows for that kind of thing to happen, and it's in such a small minority, then legally that's going to happen when you're going to have cases like that. If you're going to legislate according to the exception, then you're going to have bad legislation, and that is proven demonstrably across every area of the legal system.
Okay,
you see it all the time.
Let me give you a scenario. A poor couple. They really can't afford to have children, but this woman sees that if she has a disabled child, that she will get benefits from the government. So she asked the doctor at 2 months to surgically remove her baby's legs, so that when the baby is born, it will have no legs and she'll get benefits. Should that be allowed?
This is a ridiculous argument.
Should it be allowed?
It doesn't happen.
Well,
I'm sorry, but I'm not going to discuss legislation for things that just don't happen.
Hang on. It's a hypothetical, right? And by the way,
but it's a stupid hypothetical. I'm sorry, but it is. It's like it's literally never going to happen. So why is it coming up?
But you criticize Sye for not answering hypothetical questions and things like that. I mean, and I get it, he doesn't, by the way. But I mean, it's a fair hypothetical to ask, whether it happens once or never. It's still what ifs, and I have no problem with those types of questions. But hang on one second. I Am Moon for $10 says, let me clarify. Men can speak on human rights. However, if it's a woman's rights issue, it would be better to have a woman in the discussion. A woman's rights issue should have a woman present if they're advocating for a certain position, but not necessarily. Look, I can advocate for women's rights, and I don't have to have a uterus to do so, right? That's a genetic fallacy. Where the argument comes from makes no difference. But I think to have a representative sample, right?
You can be a woman without a uterus.
See, Steve, I want to address what you said
sure.
with the issue of what if, like hypotheticals. But I have no problem with discussing hypotheticals and what ifs, but when it comes to legislation, I do have a problem with discussing what ifs, because we've had so much legislation passed on the basis of a what if that was unproven. Like, look at the student debt crisis. The entire student debt, and I know this is getting off field, but it's a great example. The entire student debt crisis came about because when they first started doing government loans for student debts back in the 60s, it was the entire process for how they dealt with that debt was based on the hypothetical. Well, what if somebody goes to school and they become a doctor and they're really rich to make it out of it? And it didn't happen. But
he's not asking you to make policy on it, right? He wasn't asking you to just change the laws.
He is, though.
No, I don't think he was. But
that's actually the point. That's the end game.
Okay, so Sye, you're in the position that at conception life occurs, and at that point it's sanctified, right? That's
right.
Okay, so would you agree that at that point, let's say you have the very simple gamete, right? It's just a cell. It hasn't even split yet, so it's not human by definition. Humans are multicellular. Would you agree? I mean, categorically speaking. Right.
I would say at conception, that is a life that deserves protection.
But it's not a human at that point, right? Because it's a cell.
What is it?
It's a something that could be a human. A sea is not.
When does it become human? Is it a dolphin?
Hang on. It's a potential. It has potentiality, right? A seed is not a tree, right? A seed has the potential to become a tree, but a seed is not a tree.
What kind of seed?
A tree seed.
A tree seed?
Yeah,
what kind of tree seed?
Acorn, apple seed. They have the potential, right? There's potentiality there. So there's a human embryo that will be developed at a certain point, which is a human embryo. It does not necessarily human. Well, again, it goes into biological and it goes into legal things. But a single cell, right? Just a fertilized cell, I can never see an argument that anybody would ever call that human, because humans, as Aaron Ra will tell you, is chemoheliotropic, has an internal digestive system, multicellular. I mean, even Aaron, that's his shtick, right? Even though
but I don't leave it to unbelievers to declare to me what is a human or not. I trust God's word for that.
Oh, okay. So God has told you that a fertilized cell is because I don't think in the Bible they knew what that was. Right.
Well, I would say that there's sufficient scripture to support that it's life from conception.
Hold it. How can you make that statement when up until essentially the 1800s, the attitude scripturally from both the Christian, the Muslim, and the Jewish perspective was that it wasn't actually a human being until, respectively, for Muslims, I believe it's 3 months for boys, 6 months for girls. Christians, it was around 6 months. And Jews, they're like, until it actually comes out of the womb, it's not a human being. And you're sitting here saying you can scripturally justify that? I just don't see that. I just don't see that as plausible.
So are you saying that the woman should be allowed to have the legs of her child surgically removed at 2 months?
No, I asked you a question on how you justify that, given the history of.
You didn't answer my question.
You didn't answer mine.
I asked yours first.
No, you actually didn't. I asked you how do you justify that? Oh, you mean the hypothetical you did back there?
Right.
You mean the hypothetical you did back there?
Right. At 2 months.
So, at 2 months. At 2 months, well.
All right, so where in the Bible?
My problem is I'm trying to picture this surgically if it can even be done, and I can't.
Well,
it's like this is again getting into the case of like, would it be allowed? No, I don't think a doctor would allow that. If you could find a doctor who would do it, but I can't.
They do. No, they do it. That's partial birth abortion. How they?
Well, at 2 months. At 2 months.
Oh, they do it up to 8 months, 9 months.
No, he's talking about at 2 months going and surgically remove the legs off a baby just arbitrarily, so then I can be born handicapped. That's what he's saying.
Oh, that's what he's asking.
Yeah, which is just like such an implausible hypothetical.
Yeah, that's a little bit.
It's like why address it?
Yeah,
that's my attitude, especially when we're talking about passing legislation. I'm sorry, but that's just ridiculous.
Of course, it's ridiculous. That's why you want to address it, because it exposes the absurdity of your worldview.
No, it actually doesn't. It's
Why?
Because it can't be done. Can you even do that surgically? I'm not a doctor. I don't even know if they could do that surgically technically. If you could even get a doctor to agree to it.
But I think he would agree that we no ethical doctor would ever do such a thing, right?
Yeah.
Why not? They'd kill it, but they wouldn't take the legs off.
But
yeah, that's because you're dealing with something that's a potential life at that point.
Yeah.
It's not actually a human being yet; it's a potential life. So you've got the inevitability that it's going to be born, assuming it survives the process and it makes it all the way through. It will eventually be a human being who is handicapped by force. Yeah, and you can laugh, but that's exactly the argument.
You can take the legs off, but you can't. So you can kill it, but you can't take the legs off.
Good argument. But you see, but now you're getting into the issue. You're getting into the issue of the potential life versus existing human life. And you're talking about it actually in the context of the United States of America, a country where it's been been made very clear over and over again that human life has very little value.
You can harm it, but
that's just a fact.
You can kill it, but you can't harm it.
Well, they can kill grandma.
Good argument.
They can kill grandpa because you know what? People want haircuts and they don't want to wear masks.
Right.
So apparently, if they can do that, then you shouldn't have a problem with abortion. And meanwhile, it's also a rights issue. Okay, and in order to do what you're talking about and have somebody come, like have a baby come to birth all the way through, you're talking about taking away the woman's rights at that point. And we already
she wants to have the legs of her baby removed.
No, I'm talking about the straight abortion.
How dare you trample her rights?
So I'm talking about abortion.
I'm talking about having her
legs. And no other legal instance are you allowed to force somebody else to use their body in a way like that. Look at blood transfusions. If a rare blood transfusion, you cannot force a father, for example, to give a blood transfusion for a child who's going to die without it. It's a rare genetic disorder. But in this, we're making an exception, which just strikes me as ridiculous.
How dare you trample?
So, do you think a biological parent has the obligation to, for example, like let's say, my child needs a kidney? Do you think I have a moral or legal obligation? I must give them one.
There's no legal.
I don't.
Oh, you're asking Sye. I'm sorry.
I don't believe I can justify that biblically.
Okay, and he's asking you the kind of same question. He's asking you, look, if it was the case, and again, it's a silly thing, but I mean, since it is physically possible, a doctor could remove some like legs just to hobble a child for whatever reason. He's asking you
benefit,
whatever the reason might be. He's asking you to justify using
welfare witch.
Okay, fine. Let's say
that's what he's saying.
All right, so let's say the mother wants to get on some kind of dole that where the child is crippled, and so therefore they get money out of it. He's asking you, what in your ethical framework would disallow that? What would be a moral thing that prohibits that, right? Would be morally non-obligatory. Matter of fact, it'd be forbidden to do such a thing, right? He's asking you how you would justify that, is basically. And by the way, it's a fair question. I mean, it's just... odd, but it's nothing. Like it can happen, right? So it's not like it's an impossibility. It's not like saying, hey, hypothetically, if I want to sew wings on my kid, so he can fly, that would be, silly, right? Because that can't happen. But this is something that could happen. It's probably, obviously, would never happen because doctors would lose their license. But what would you say to that? I mean, what in your moral framework disallows that?
You asking me or Sye?
You.
So I wasn't clear who you're directing to.
You're
asking me?
Mm-hmm.
So we're talking about the idea of removing the legs until it comes to birth.
Yeah, to cripple so the mother can get benefits. Like, what prevents that, ethically speaking?
Well, I technically already answered, but I'll answer it again. Maybe I wasn't clear. So again, we're dealing with potential life versus already existing life. And the entire principle for abortion and how it works is kind of based on the idea of you're dealing with potential life. And the further along it gets, the more it stops being a potential life and it's going to become an existing life. So if you're going to do a surgical procedure on, let's say, a 2-month-old fetus, at that point, you are making a decision based on the assumption that it is going to come to full potentiality. And in that point, you have to treat that decision in the full context of it being a fully born human being. And at that point, that violates any ethical considerations, because now you're dealing with, this is going to have the inevitable impact on the fully born.
So it'd be cruel to limit a child's potential by making them more difficult for their life, assuming they're going to have a full life expectancy then. Because it's clearly going to make their life more difficult, which I think is unethical, right?
Essentially, yeah.
Okay.
So just so we
answer.
have this clear, it's not unethical to kill it, but it's unethical to remove its legs. Thanks. I'm willing to have have your worldview
because
as such.
yeah, but simply put, there's no theological considerations because abortion is legal, right? So you can't say that it's unethical to have abortion if it is legal.
Well,
right?
I can
at
say
least
at
least deontologically, right? At least according to some kind of moral
slavery
duty,
was unethical
right?
when it was legal.
In your worldview, sure, it's unethical. I get that, right?
Yeah.
So was slavery, and it was legal. So I mean, the legality has nothing to do with it.
So you'd be an absolutist on that. It is more.
And he's coming from the position that he doesn't view, despite all the evidence to the contrary, that he doesn't view any difference between, let's say, like a 1-day-old fetus and a fully born human being. So because he refuses to make that distinction, as far as he's concerned, he's actually scoring some kind of point with the question on, cutting the legs off the baby, because he's not even acknowledging the idea of potentiality.
Listen, I'm quite content to have you say publicly that it's not okay to remove this baby's legs, but it's okay to kill it. I'm quite content to leave it at that.
You see, because it's a different point of view.
Well, it's an appeal to emotion
because
it's making it sound much worse than it is.
Oh, it's very emotional.
It's an appeal to emotion.
It's an appeal to emotion, sure. Yeah, you're killing a zygote, right? You're killing.
I think a very successful. Well, I mean, you're taking the legs off a zygote too, according to your world. So what? It's just a clump of cells.
Well, I look at it just a couple of cells. That is true.
I mean, it's essentially a fallacy. It's a reductio ad absurdum.
I also look at something that
you're not kidding.
Look, but my position is different, right?
You're presenting the entire argument as a ridiculous argument. You're trying to win points by presenting a ridiculous, absurd argument, and it might work. I guess it'll work for your fans, people who like you, and for you, but for people who are reasonable, like even I know people who are pro-life, who even they would say that's a ridiculous.
Okay,
argument. They argue from the position of potentiality of a human being.
Let's just be clear.
Go ahead and repeat it.
Are you saying that it is okay to kill the child at 2 months, but it's not okay to remove the child's legs?
Well, I don't view it as killing. That's the thing. I don't view it as killing.
To take off its head. It's okay to take off its head, but not its legs.
But
is that basically what you're saying?
From my perspective, especially as a Jew, it's not killing.
So okay. Let's say, well, forget the word killing. It's okay to remove its head.
Yeah, we should, because
it's okay to remove its head, but it's not
the fetus to a human being. So yeah,
it's okay to remove. It's okay to remove its head, but not its legs. Is that what you're saying?
No, I'm saying that it is okay to do away with the fetus as opposed to a human being. Yes.
All right. So let me ask you this, and I know I got a little background. It's my AC. It's too hot in here. I can't survive without it right now. So let me ask you this, Sye. So let me by analogy. People will advocate for the death penalty. God advocated for the death penalty. God killed people, right? So what? Wait a minute. You can kill people, but for example, punishment. We can have capital punishment, but you can't have cruel and unusual punishment, right? You can't torture somebody in prison, but you can execute them, right? There are different things in society where one is morally egregious, than the other because one is state sanctioned, right? One is actually approved by society to have capital punishment. And again, God seemed to have been favored for capital punishment. He wanted to kill everybody, man. According to, he killed, billions of people or whatever it was and only left 8.
He killed everybody who's ever died.
No, like literally he terminated their life by murdering them.
Everybody who's ever died.
By murdering?
Do you want me to answer the question for Sye since he's not going to answer?
Yeah, go ahead.
There was no question. Yeah. What was the question?
So he's what Steve is talking about is the idea that God, if you look at, I'm going to deal with the Tanakh because I know you don't like talking about the Christian Bible. So if you look at examples in the Tanakh, you see that there are many examples of God doing, and this gets into the idea of whether or not God is good and what he does is right. So he is clearly killed. He is killed. He has given instructions to kill. He is like to do it in your name. From the perspective of a believer, if you accept the idea that God is good, and that's based on the principle that because God says it, therefore it is good, no matter how outrageous it might seem to you, then yeah, therefore from their perspective, if God kills somebody, it's good because he's God and he says what's good. That's essentially what it comes right down to. That would be my answer.
Not my view.
What?
Not my view.
Yeah, I think more divine.
Well, you can elaborate on it.
I can, but I'm not interested in having the discussion with somebody who cannot justify rationality.
I think divine command theory would more the position of God says something is good than the moral thing to do is just obey God, right? You obeying God is what makes it moral, rather than just under divine command theory.
No, God's nature and character is what make it moral.
Well, as I understand ethical subjectivism, it's more the abeyance of the actual law, right? God's law.
Not a subjectivist.
Well, you don't hold to divine command theory? That whatever God says is good and you obey it, that's being moral?
No, I would say that God says things according to his nature.
And then if you obey it, that's good, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Being in conforming to his nature.
And
that's what he bases his commands on.
And it comes
Is
from
God evil?
Oh, hang on. And it comes
Is
from
God ever evil? Does he ever
No.
do evil? Okay, then it is your view because you're saying everything God does is good and it's his nature to be good, so therefore to do anything he says to do or he does is good. So you just contradicted yourself again.
He was saying
I'm supporting you.
He was saying the basis of morality, and I'm saying that's not the basis of morality. It's not based on his command, it's based on his character.
Well, let me tell you why it's ethical subjectivism. I am Moon 5 hours says, sorry for getting all up in my feelings, LOL. No problem, Moon. You're allowed to. Perfectly fine. Don't even sweat it. You're perfectly allowed to. No, the reason I talk about ethical subjectivism is because look, if God is going to tell you what the moral choice should be, right? If you have a moral decision and you are going to do some kind of normative ethics, God's going to say this is what you need to do, right? And you have it somehow. He came up with it for whatever reason. Whether you can get into the whole euphemism flow dilemma, but for the most part, he said this is what it is. The problem is that you don't have any epistemic access to that, right? You can read about it, right? But it's still a subjective, right? It's not an objective fact of the matter, right? For example, I could feel something, right? I can sense it. I feel pain, but my pain is subjective. You cannot ever experience my pain. It's forever epistemically isolated from you. God, if God has these rules, they're only known to him why he has these rules. It could be arbitrary. He could have something of higher value why he has these rules, which would be kind of odd, but it's possible. But we don't know why he has these rules. He's just telling you these are the rules. You can't.
No, we do know why he has these rules.
We really
based
don't.
On his nature and character.
But we don't. You don't know that. You're just assuming that it's presup. You're presupping that, which is so.
That's what the Bible says.
But you're presupping that, so you don't know it.
Are you saying that God can't make us know that?
You're saying that you can't justify it if you're presupping it. Presup is not knowledge, right? You can't be justified, correct?
No, I'm saying that God can reveal things to us such that we can know them for certain, including his nature and character.
But you're presupping that.
Yeah.
So you're not seeing the point here. So if God says this is what the moral act is, it is subjective. You have no way to epistemically ever access it independently.
God makes us know things for certain.
But you couldn't ever access it independently. That makes it subjective.
Are you saying that God cannot make us know things for certain?
You're missing the whole point here.
No, it's a simple question. Are you saying that God cannot make us know?
Oh, well, I don't believe in God, so I don't know what God can and cannot do. But
it doesn't matter. But you're not saying.
Let's say that he could.
You're not an atheist.
Let's say that
you're
he could.
Saying it's impossible for God to exist.
Yeah. Sure. Let's say that he could.
According to his word, he makes us know things for certain.
Let's say that he could.
That's my worldview.
Let's say that he could. Let's say he could make you know for certain.
He does.
Okay.
Yeah.
That still doesn't take away from the fact that he's just making you know this. You're not objectively doing it. You're not looking at anything objectively. You're just getting the information fed to you, right? If God did to be objective, it would be like, okay, let's say like Philip and I want to play chess. Play chess. I always do this. Play chess. And I say, hey, let's play chess. We have the rules of chess that objectively I could read it, go, this is the rules. He can agree. These are the rules. You have no idea what God's rules are, only because he's just told you that but these are the rules, and you've presupposed that they are correct, and he's telling you in a way that you know for sure. That's all presup, right? You have no ability to objectively verify
you're
that.
saying that I can know things for certain, but I can't really know things for certain. Is that what you're saying?
No, I'm giving you the premise that it's possible that God could tell you something from certain, but even if it did, even if he did, it's still subjective.
Okay, so you're saying I can know things for certain, but it's subjective.
I give you an example. If God could tell you that I'm experiencing pain, he can let you know in a way that you know for certain I'm experiencing pain. But there's no possible way you can ever experience my pain, is there? Because it's my pain.
I don't have to.
Because that makes it subjective. There you go. That's why it's not objective.
No, not my knowledge of you having pain, of the truth claim of you having pain. That's not subjective.
But you can't experience my pain. It's sense data that is my own, which makes it subjective.
I don't have to experience your pain to know for certain that you're experiencing pain.
Right. You can know that I've experienced it, but you cannot experience yourself. That's the whole point. That's what makes it subjective.
No, but can I objectively know that you're experiencing pain?
Sure, you can objectively know that I experience pain, but that's not what the argument is. The argument is not that can you objectively know that I experience pain. The argument is that you cannot experience my pain. Therefore, my pain itself, not the knowledge of my pain, my actual pain.
I never said I could experience your pain.
Right, and you can't experience the same thing. You cannot know the mind of God. You cannot say that God. You cannot experience what He experiences for why He is justified to say this is what's right and wrong. You're just taking it axiomatically. Right, that's ethical subjectivism.
No, I can know for certain what God commands.
But that doesn't matter when you know for certain what He commands. He's missing the point here, right?
Can I see if I'm getting what you're getting at? Can I try wording it a different way?
Sure, go ahead. Knock yourself out.
You can tell me, because I think I know what you're getting at.
Yeah, okay.
You're kind of getting at the idea that, like, essentially because we are imperfect human beings who are limited by our senses and how we work as a creature.
Yeah, we filter everything through
if God
sense.
communicates with us, even when He communicates with us, we are still limited by that. Is that kind of the idea? Like, we're limited.
Well, that, Phil?
Yeah, well,
I'm asking Steve if that's what he means.
In the sense data way of looking at something, right?
Yeah.
I'm experiencing something like my water bottle here, right? I perceive something to exist here, right? Now you could be a mereological nihilist, and you could say, look, there's no actual object here; it's just a bunch of particles that are, primitives that are arranged to be a bottle, right? But my sense is saying that I'm seeing something, correct? He cannot experience what I'm experiencing. That sense data is unique to me. And if I'm seeing this bottle, he could be seeing the bottle too. We could experience it quite differently. But he has no way to ever epistemically reach into my head and experience what I'm experiencing. So if God says, these are the rules, he's just telling you this. Now you can objectively know that these are the rules. I could tell Phil, hey, these are the rules of chess, right? These are the rules, right? I could objectively, he can know these are the rules. But he can't go validate that. He can't objectively go look to find the rules unless he has the rules somewhere to look for them, right? You're just presupposing that these rules exist. You're going to call that the Bible. That is the Word of God, right? But that's just a precept. It's not experiencing what God has said. I have these rules for these particular reasons. Like, what is the reason why God has given a certain commandment? Why does he do this? And you can't say it's just good, right? You can't say it's...
No, I would say because they're based on his character. For instance, stealing is wrong because God is not a thief.
But that's not an answer.
Adultery is wrong because God is perfectly faithful. But lying is wrong because God is perfectly honest.
But that's,
Steve,
that's just rephrasing. That's just rephrasing.
I'd like
I'm not
a. I'm not. Help him get this,
sure.
But I don't
that's
think
just,
you'll
real quick.
allow me to help
Yeah,
him
sure.
get it.
Real quick.
I'm just let you do it for a bit more.
No, you can have it real quick. It's just like saying I'm not a thief because I don't steal. Okay, that's just doesn't tell you anything.
No, you're not God.
But why is it prescriptively the case that you shouldn't steal?
Because we're commanded to be his imitators. Ephesians 5 verse 1.
We're
commanded to.
But why?
We're created in his image, and our responsibility on earth is to imitate him.
That's what we're commanded to do. But God could have said, "Hey, stealing is good." Why didn't he?
No, because the laws are based on his character.
So he's beholden to a higher value. There's something about not stealing. God has to obey. It's the value of not stealing that's higher than God commanding it.
He's not a thief.
Again, I don't think he's understanding this. But go ahead, Phil.
I don't think he is. Yeah. No, I'd also say that just as an addition, that if God was a thief, then it would be good that God was a thief because he's God.
Yeah, he could do that, right? I mean,
what he does,
he could do it, right?
I mean, there's even examples of him basically being essentially a thief in the Bible. He's running a honeypot scheme in the beginning there, I mean, that's what I described earlier. And, normally we would, as human beings, we would find that abhorrent, but it's God doing it. So if you're a believer, well, then, as Sye would put it, because that's his character.
Well, you would appeal to an absolute standard that you can't justify. So it's nonsensical.
Thanks for acknowledging the point.
Thank you.
Yeah, well, he does, again, I don't know what his theory of justification is. People know I do tend to foundationalism, but I got no problem with foundationalism or coherentism, whatever. Pick your poison.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. There's no right answer to that, right?
Like I came into this like my attitude was like I haven't even thought about him in 6 years. So for all I know, he's changed, and like I'm willing to have a virtuous, inquiry with him. But right from the start, he made it pretty clear he wasn't interested in that. So I was just like, yeah, whatever.
Well, yeah, it's hard. Okay, but here's the thing: it's hard when you have baggage, right? I mean, I happen to know Sye. We go pretty way back, and we are friends. I'm not gonna front. I like the guy. People know this. I get so much crap for it, but whatever. He probably gets crap.
You just lost 1,000 subscribers,
right? Yeah, I don't do this for views. Trust me, I don't. Yeah, whatever. But the thing is that when you go into a discussion, there is something called a cooperative principle, right? And you should put some of those things aside to try to at least steel man people's positions. At least try to look at the best possible light of what they're trying to say. If people haven't seen it, go watch Caffeine Corner. Cheshire and I talk about these things frequently. We talked about Grice's maxims the other day and Graham's hierarchy. And it is kind of so you got to remember, it is kind of infuriating when people do try to have an honest dialogue and you just sit there and assume they're not being honest, right? They're being disingenuous.
I knew it was going to go this way because I put that Facebook post up where I was being kind of a dick. I sent you a message about it because I felt bad about it after Sye, where I said, oh, and hey, I was just having some fun in those comments there. I'm sorry if it pissed you off or hurt your feelings or any shit like that. I didn't intend any meanness towards you or anything. And then I said, well, the OP was kind of mean. So yeah, I was a dick. You want to call me on it? You totally got me there. And you said nothing back. And then you proceeded to just troll and kind of be the way you were being on Twitter. And at that point, I knew that there was no way this conversation was going to go well because I had offered you an olive branch and you basically just ignored it. So of course I knew it was going to go this way because that's how he intended it to go, because that's how he wanted it to go.
Well, the thing is, I have a biblical mandate on how I'm supposed to address folly. I answer a fool according to his folly, lest he be wise in his own eyes.
Yeah, it's called aggressive Christianity. We used to call it
the
Christianity.
Proverbs 26.
No, there's actually like different ways you can approach proselytizing, and the way you're doing it is this old 1980s style where you're aggressive and hostile in the hopes of getting a reaction. And I'm trying not to be insulting here, but it was always considered kind of dickish.
All right, let me ask. By the way, I'm not going to front. Both of you guys were a little like that on Twitter, but so am I. So no judging, right? Twitter's Twitter. It's
I didn't take it personally.
Not at all.
I knew he was trolling, but I was like,
nothing is personal on Twitter, man.
On Twitter. That's our job there.
Look, just literally 2 minutes before we went live, you guys saw me typing. I was talking to an atheist that got triggered literally because he didn't understand principle of bivalence and law of excluded middle. He literally was telling me he doesn't believe that I exist. And I was like, okay, so you don't believe that I exist, but you're talking to me. He's like, well, I'm not saying that, but I'm like, look, you either believe or you don't believe. This is simple logic here. I'm not trying to like screw with your head here. But instead of saying, okay, well, I have to pick one or the other because it's logic, he blocked me, right? Because he was taking it personal. He was like, you're having tone with me. You're getting aggressive. I'm like, it's Twitter. How am I getting aggressive? I've had these discussions forever. Sye, how many times have you had these types of discussions? Could you even count if you had to? Yeah, I mean, it's just we don't.
This happened on Twitter.
It literally happened on Twitter, like on my Twitter page, like 2 minutes before we went live. You guys are gonna go check out on my Twitter page, and if you're not following me on Twitter, you should.
He was probably like me. Most people go to Twitter when they're just kind of frustrated and angry and pissed off, and they don't want to yell at somebody. Well, that's how I use Twitter. I had to read here to have a conversation with him because normally my attitude on Twitter is I'm just going on there to blow up steam. And then I didn't want to I was like, okay, I'm going to try to back it down and be a decent, nice person, be a mensch, but he just wasn't having any of it. So,
yeah, you're a good Jew boy, aren't you?
Yeah.
Your mom would be proud of you.
You can ask my booby.
Yeah.
She loves me. She loves my hair.
Yeah. My mom is not the quintessential Jew, but yeah, she used to make matzah broth for us. I still love matzah broth.
Oh yeah. Nah, my mom was. Everything I did made her nervous. That was her catchphrase. Oh, you're making me nervous. But it's like one of the Jewish mother things to say.
But again, what happens on Twitter? We all expect the worst on Twitter. But I was kind of hoping you guys would have a little bit more of a dialogue. I don't know what the hell topic we went. I mean, it's like 6,000.
I knew it was gonna go.
Not surprising.
I even offered to you, Sye, Aaron and I have had a bet about whether this would happen, and you jumped in on it. and I said, hey, I'll give you the same. Okay, it's a thing that
Wait,
I
who'd
do
you
with
bet?
people
Wait,
I know.
who'd you bet?
It's called a dude bet.
Who'd you bet?
Or no, I'm sorry, it's a bro bet. And bro bets consist of basically you just make a random bet about something, and the winner does drinks. They pay the first round.
Yeah. Who'd you bet?
So I lost it, and technically I lost it to him. And
who'd you bet?
And bro bets are sacred, so I will honor it if he wants to take me up.
No, but who'd you bet? You bet Sye?
Well, I bet Aaron that he would not do this.
Oh, Aaron Ra?
And Aaron thought I lost, and
Yeah.
I was like, I don't know, we'll see. And then Sye jumped in and said, I'll take that action. And I said,
Yeah, you know what? Hey,
these are sacred bets, bro bets.
look,
okay.
If
you believe in God totally he sanctifies them.
I hope
so. They have to be honored.
I hope Aaron watches this, because again, I know we have our differences. I happen to like Aaron a hell of a lot. He may not get that, and we may never be able to rectify things. But I got no ill will against the guy at all. I think we stand together on phylogeny and biology. It's a shame there's philosophical differences, but the fact is that I'm right, and I'm not going to capitulate that, right? But I would love to buy a beer for him too.
Towards you. When
oh my God, dude, it's ridiculous. I mean,
I give you shit about the agnostic atheist thing.
Yeah, well,
we'll do that another time. Yeah,
well,
because
you know what? That was the guy that asked me about it. He's like, "What's your position on this?" And I showed him my blogs and blah blah blah. But I was just like trying to explain to him basic logic. I was like, I've seen Sye and like Dar's deity even will basically, for certain people, they will stop and they'll say, "Okay, let me explain this to you to help your argument." Right? I've seen it happen. Right? And they're not trying to manipulate anybody at that point. They're not trying to, like, for example, Hume's problem of induction. Okay, people have tried to explain to atheists, this is what it is, okay? We're trying to help you with this. Don't sit there and try to justify the use of, like, induction by saying, oh, well, induction works tomorrow, because we all know that's fallacious, right? So we try to help people, and they think that we're being either aggressive or being snobbish or being arrogant or being rude or being narcissistic, and it's not at all. It is the fact that we want people to have better arguments, whether you're a theist or atheist. And when you have bad arguments, like I'm doing a segment with Reasons to Believe with Dr. Fazrana on this very thing: atheist bad arguments and theist bad arguments. Right? We're gonna do the gambit, right? So it's weird when you see people reject that. It's weird when you see somebody say, like, "Look, I accept logic," and then you say, "Okay, do you believe that I exist, or you do not believe that I exist? Which is it? You cannot have any other options. Those are jointly exhaustive and mutually exclusive from each other, right? Would you agree, Sye? There's no other options in logic." And you have an atheist denies that. How's that going to look to the theist? The theist is going to look on and go, man, these new atheists, they're just dumb as shit, right? And that's infuriating to somebody like me, who's a non-believer. I'm in that camp, right? I don't want to be lumped in with these people.
I mean, you're familiar enough with me, Steve, to see the videos that I do have a productive conversation.
I've seen you try sometimes.
Who profess atheism, but I like Ray Comfort's adage, "Law to the proud, grace to the humble." And I believe that Phil is one of those people who has been very proud in his accusations against me and his, posts about. So if he were to come,
but we already showed that wasn't true.
If he were to come from a humble position,
I'm sorry, but you have chosen to be pissed at me. That's literally what's going on.
You did come with a little chip on your shoulder about him, but
what?
He did. Sye did come with a little chip on his shoulder about you.
Yeah, like I apologized to him for one thing, I apologized to him for another. As far as the backing down thing, I'm just like, hey, whatever, forget about it. You say you don't back down, you didn't back down. I'm cool with that. But he wanted to be pissed at me coming into this. And I could tell it was going to
one of the things did come to mind, though, that you simply said about me that was false on Twitter. You said that I said something about masks. People shouldn't wear masks because they're ineffective. That's an outright, blatant lie. I've never said that.
You linked a video which was saying that. Now, if you're saying that you don't believe it was in that video, then you're going to have to state that. How the hell am I going to know it?
No, people asked me about that video. I said I merely posted it because at the end of the video, he was talking about the dangers of wearing masks.
Well, can we ask your opinion on that? I mean,
then you got to be more careful with that.
Can we ask your position on it?
Well, yeah, but you didn't explain it to me.
So you do wear a mask when you go out, right?
Infrequently.
Okay. Do you think that churches, if churches are allowed to open, do you think that they should be mandated that they wear masks?
No.
Okay. Do you think that they should be mandated that they can't open? I mean, do you think that's
no?
Okay. So you're like Pastor, like, Greg Locke, obviously. We all know Greg.
Yeah. The thing is, some people in the chat last night were attributing comments to him that I found troubling, but I don't know whether he said them or not.
Yeah. I mean, you watched the show that we talked about, Greg Locke, and so he advocates it's his religious freedom and society be damned when society says, look, we have to maintain certain kind of health standards. Matter of fact, you would agree that you can't walk into a store with no shirt, no shoes, no service. You're okay with that, but if they ask you to wear a mask, there's a problem.
No, I'm absolutely okay with a store mandating that I wear a mask. I have no problem with that.
But not a church. Why?
Yeah, well,
why?
I'm saying that they can, but I'm saying that there's no biblical justification for doing that.
Okay, well,
you're asking me whether they should or not. I don't think they should. I don't think stores should, but they're well within their rights to do it.
But do you think
it's a private business?
But do you think the government should be able to say, look, as a private business, your patrons have to wear a mask. If you go to church, you have to wear a mask. You don't think the government has a right to say that?
Well, it's very interesting because people can refuse service for not wearing a mask, but they can't refuse. But when somebody refuses to bake a cake for whatever reason, then the government says, you can't do that.
So that was an artistic license.
It's the inconsistency. Let me finish. It's the inconsistency that I find very problematic.
But that's a whataboutism, right? You're basically shifting it to something else.
No, I'm saying the inconsistency.
And they actually said that the reason why baking a cake is that's an artistic thing, and you cannot force somebody to do something artistic, regardless. And there's some reasonings to that, right? I mean, as much as I hate it, and I think it's asinine that people won't bake a cake, but there are some arguments to be had because of artistic license. But like you can't say, look, I force you to say you're an artist, I'm going to commission you to make a portrait of me, right? You can say, look, I don't want to make a portrait of you. You have that right. You cannot force somebody to do that. But if I say, hey, this, I don't want to sell you coffee because some inherent property about you, that's illegal as well as it should be. But I'm asking you, Sye, you're
I don't think it should be. I think that the public will take care of that.
You don't think it should be? You don't think the government? See, the problem that doesn't work. I mean, remember Jim Crow's laws?
No, it does work. It does work.
What does work?
The society doesn't make these rules themselves. Yeah, they don't take care of it. The government needs to intervene.
Canadian, so
he's Canadian. Yeah,
we're Americans. Okay. We're like
fair enough. He's Canadian.
I mean, I know the Canadians. Like, I have relatives in Canada. Don't get me wrong, and I can they're nutsy up there sometimes. But Americans, no, we don't. I just want to make a quick point. Sure. What you're talking about with like the legality of the cake and the whatnot. You get into these situations in law, and they actually have it. Like, remember back? Like, I don't know, Steve, you're my age. Remember back in like the 80s, 90s? Yeah, I know. Yeah, they had the whole thing with like they had men's only clubs and women, or gyms, for example. And if you notice, like if you look at how they actually handle the case law for that, it's usually done on a case by case basis because it's specific to each case in the sense of what's available in the area. So the idea is that we're going to try to give somebody the right to do the services, offer services they want to, within the context, if there's literally nothing else in the area, then no, we have to give them access because they have to have the right to have service.
Yeah, it has to do with their business model a lot too. Like,
that's why it usually goes on a case by case basis. But the assumption is that if there is absolutely any way we can prevent the business, like deny them their right to operate their business as they want to, we're gonna do that.
Hooters had that. There was a big kerfluffle about that. But it was decided that Hooters has a very specific business model, right? They're looking for a very specific type of image, and other businesses can have the same kind of things, right? I mean, if you're trying to push big and tall men's suits, right? You're not going to have a skinny female model. It just makes no sense to do that. It's not part of the business model. Josiah Hansen, $2. Not all atheists, though. Don't know what it's referring to, but my point being is this. That
you jump right to the Hooters example. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, it's true. I mean, because that's a business example, right?
No.
But my point being is that there are certain things in society that have been set by the government in order to make sure that there's health and safety and well-being for everybody, right? Yeah. And to supersede that, for an individual like Pastor John Locke, to supersede that and say, look, I'm just going to thumb my nose at all the scientists and say, look, I'm going to open up the church. I'm going to have all these people come in. I'm not going to have any kind of social distancing. I'm not going to have forced masks, and people die from that. I think that's negligent homicide. You don't think that?
Do you think that convenience stores should be prohibited from selling alcohol and cigarettes because of what people might do with them? Because they might get cancer.
That's whataboutism. That's whataboutism.
No, I'm asking you a simple question. Should convenience stores, I'm just reducing to absurdity your view.
It's not a reductio ad absurdum.
Should a convenience store
literally
be forbidden from selling cigarettes because somebody might cause cancer among somebody else by secondhand smoke?
Okay. So back to my question. Why shouldn't the government be able to say, this is what we deem to be health concern. This is something that we think supersedes your individual rights as a church. Why should one person, this isn't a community, this is one person like Pastor Locke say, I don't care about that. I'm going to open up the church.
The Bible says, render unto Caesar what is Caesar.
Do you think he should be culpable?
And the worship service is not Caesar.
Do you think that he should be morally comparable and legally culpable if there is a death because somebody has caught the virus and died from it? Do you think there's any legal?
Only if you force them to go to church.
I disagree with you.
Do you think the churches should have to follow building code?
Should they have to follow building code?
Yeah, building code in their construction and build and in their safety.
I think that's reasonable. I don't think there's any biblical mandate that would disallow that.
So what's the biblical mandate that says you can or can't wear a mask?
The biblical
I'm
mandate.
actually genuinely curious because
the biblical mandate for disease is to quarantine the sick, not the healthy. It's mitigating factors on the sick, not on the healthy. That's the biblical mandate.
But the reason why people self-isolate is so they, first of all, you can be asymptomatic, clearly, right? And people that are immune compromised, people that are elderly, people that have conditions, they are more susceptible, and you could possibly transmit it to them and not even know, right? I mean,
not if they're home.
Well, but not if you're home either, right? That's the whole point.
Right. No, but the thing is, the mandate is not on quarantining the healthy, not on having mitigating factors against the healthy.
Because you don't.
The biblical mandate. The biblical.
How do you know you're healthy? How do you know if you're healthy?
I'd have to ask him the passage, and I know he doesn't like
here's the thing, and it's the inconsistency too, because they say wear a mask. Now, what if they say, well, now you have to wear goggles, now you have to wear a hazmat suit, and now you can't drive anymore because a lot of people.
You know what?
But it's your jobs you do.
So I get my mandate as to what is an over-imposition on free humans from God and not from the government.
Hang on, let me say this real quick. Sye, I worked in situations where OSHA mandates you had to wear face shields. If you're welding, you had to wear certain gear. I've had to wear hazmat suits. I've had to wear chemical, biological, radiological suits. I've had to wear full OBAs or oxygen breathing apparatuses. I've had to wear this stuff because OSHA says it, right? OSHA, if you ever work in any even retail, you don't even know the crap. They once listed bricks as hazardous material. Okay.
Yeah, I'm a HAZWOPER supervisor, so I'm familiar with
I mean, I'm not making this stuff up. Ladders have to be a certain amount of thing. They have to have a cage. It's so many rules and regulations, but it's all for safety, right? One person is not able to say, look, I don't care about this OSHA regulation. We're not going to have this. What? You have to have this amount of PSI in your fire header? And I'm going to let it go. Oh, my fire extinguishers, I can let them go depressurized to 3/4. Yeah, whatever. I don't have to safety check them. And by the way, as an operations manager, one of my job was to check these things regularly and sign my initial to them that they met certain conditions for OSHA, right? That's because society has mandated this, and you're just saying anybody can arbitrarily, because of religious reasons, say, I don't have to pay this.
I'm saying that the Bible lays out specific guidelines for mitigating the spread of disease, and that's my authority.
So I have to jump in here. Because Halakha and Jewish law interpretation of it pretty distinctly says,
you're an atheist.
So I'm a Jew.
He's a cultural Jew.
I'm a Jewish agnostic. You can call me a Jewish atheist.
He's a cultural Jew.
An old New York City Jew. And so our attitude is that
if you like lox and bagels, baby, you're one of mine.
Well, no, our attitude is that you know what, us Jews say that we don't believe in God, and we're pretty sure He's fine with us.
What is the Tanakh then?
The Tanakh is the Jewish Bible.
And is it authoritative?
What you call the Old Testament.
Is it authoritative?
Well, isn't the first 5 books
Jews,
of Moses?
Yeah.
To you.
Well, I thought it was the first 5 books of Moses.
Oh, I'm sorry, but no. You see, as a Jew, I can have conversations like this.
I'm asking if it's authoritative to you.
When I'm looking at it from a Jewish perspective, yeah, I can examine it from that perspective. Yeah, I mean, you're not going to get this because you're not a Jew. I'm sorry, but as a Christian, this is something you literally cannot get.
The Jewish God has not told Sye in a way that
Steve kind of knows what I'm talking about.
A little bit, dude.
Where did you grow up? What area of Judaism?
Well, I'm from Orange County, but I'm the world's worst Jew. Don't take me as an example, right?
I'm an old school.
My mom's an old school in New York. No, she's from Brooklyn. My mom's from Brooklyn.
Anyway, my point is that I'm saying is just like you're saying that it's not biblically mandated, and well, for the Jews, it is. They say it's acceptable. So clearly there's a difference in interpretation there, depending on where you're taking that from. So I'm just going to point that out, is that what you're saying is not authoritative in the end.
Let me read this real quick. Josiah Hansen for $2. I sent Sye biblical justification and was ignored. I think Josiah, he has a God complex, but he's a good guy, so I allow that. Oh, look who showed up. Atheist pastor Chris Atley for $5 Australian, which is about 26 cents American.
I
He
lost
said,
my
he says, why are the
Oh,
he says, this is my co-host for Over and Under. I love this guy. He says, why are the churches wanting to endanger their members? That's not love, it's ego. Because I think he's right on this. We had this talk, and I had this talk. It is Pastor Locke's ego that he thinks he is commissioned by God to say, you know what, I know better than everybody.
Yeah.
And you know what, people have died from this that said this. People will die.
Let me ask
from
you a
it.
question. If there were an inordinate amount of deaths due to speeding, do you think that the church should be able to order you to put a governor on your car?
I don't care about the whataboutisms.
The thing is,
no.
The church?
Parallel. These are parallels that expose.
I don't care right now about whataboutism. I don't care about whataboutisms. Let's stick with.
It's a hypothetical.
No, I'm fine with going down this one. You're saying the church to put a governor on your car, not the government, the church.
Well, the thing is, you're saying that the church should have mandates to protect people.
No, why are the church wanting to endanger their
draconian
members? The question is, and again,
Ozzy actually just addressed this in the chat.
hang on,
I'm sorry, but I did catch that. Yeah.
I don't want a whataboutism. I've already allowed for one, and I don't want another one. He
that
says
was a really bad one, unfortunately. That's
okay.
an interesting
No,
one.
but he
Whatever,
says
we can skip it.
He says, why are the churches wanting to endanger their members? Do you agree that opening the churches does put membership in a higher degree of danger? Do you agree with that?
Well, the thing is, I was not going to get into this mask situation. However, the whole idea was to flatten the curve. It was never to eliminate the virus. And the conversation, that's my problem with this argument as well, is that the argument shifts from flattening the curve, and now nobody's supposed to get the virus.
Well, they're entailed.
The society is supposed to develop antibodies to this virus, and the way that they develop antibodies is by getting it.
No,
and this
well,
thing is
yes,
proven to
but
be
that's
far less lethal.
Oh, no.
I'm feeling bad for Steve.
Yeah,
It's proven to be far less lethal than was first envisioned.
That's there's so much
demonstrably
misinformation
not
here.
true.
Yeah,
When the flattening the curve came out, it wasn't so
Yeah.
people don't get the virus. It wasn't to not overwhelm the medical system.
the RO of it
Yeah.
is basically it's twice as much as the flu. It's around 2 to 2.3 or something. So
We're actually at
infectious rate-
4.6 right now.
Yeah, it's going to be very high, and
Yeah.
the fact remains that
Yeah.
the flattening curve was basically saying, look, we don't want to overrun the hospitals, right?
Right.
But by social distancing, we do limit the transmission rate, right? It's not going to be as exponential as it would if you have people gathering together. Like we've proven this in California. As soon as Gary Newsom let the restrictions kind of like loosen up, people were partying everywhere. They were having house parties. They were going to places. They were socializing. They were going to beaches, and all of a sudden, the rates of infection went up tremendously. Right. So we know this is the case.
I believe that if the church says, look, we're going to have this, we're going to open and we're not going to have any mitigating factors against spreading of the virus, I should have the dignity to be able to choose whether or not I'm going to attend there. I don't think that should be forced upon me.
But at the same token, your choice is affecting other people.
The thing is, my mandate as to whether or not I should worship does not come from how it's going to affect other people. It's coming from God's command.
But if your God is telling
whether or
you
not it should meet.
But if your God is telling you to put your parishioners in danger where they could die from this and cause harm to others, that's not.
But the thing
what
is,
kind of God
where
is
do you
that?
draw the line? Why at this virus? Why not at the next virus? Why not the previous virus? Why
I
at
say
this
all
virus?
of them. I mean, but
It's
this,
arbitrary.
Because this is the virus.
Because this is the one we're dealing with right now. This is the one that's affecting
Yeah.
worldwide, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's an arbitrary application, and it's contrary to God's mandate for how.
And so
his
if you
people should
if you caught it and you gave it to people that you love, you wouldn't care.
Here's the problem.
Answer
I
that
tweeted
question,
about.
please. If you
Sorry,
caught
I
it,
don't- what was-
if you
yeah.
caught it and you gave it to people you cared about, you gave it to your family, you gave it to your wife, your kids, and they all died, you wouldn't have a problem with this. You'd be like, this is God's will.
Not if they were believers.
So you literally would have. I would have a problem with this. To me, I would be ethically. I think I'd be immoral to put myself in a position, right, where I know I could spread this to my daughter, right? It's unconscionable
The
to me.
problem is, and what I was said on Twitter earlier as well, is that the people who are so, for these mitigating factors are those who are terrified of death. I'm not. Death is not the
that's
worst.
actually not.
Well, let
not
me finish.
True.
Death is not the worst
Sorry.
enemy to a believer.
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to the day that I die.
And that's fine for you,
hang on,
right?
All right.
But
I'm
life-
gonna jump. If you don't mind, I'm gonna
Hey,
jump
no,
in here.
no,
I've been
let
listening
me
to you
finish.
too.
Now let him finish, and
When Sye finishes, when you finish,
Life-
I'm gonna jump in.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Life is a gift from God. But the Apostle Paul said to live is Christ and to die is gain. I'm not afraid to die. And it's the same God of the Old and New Testament who protected his people. Now, I'm not saying that I would be protected from the virus by going to church, but I'm not afraid to get it. And the survival rate among people in my demographic is very high. I'm not afraid. I would rather worship God and die than sit at home, cower at home, fearing death like the atheist population out there.
Well, it's not fear, it's sensible. It's being sensible. So let me jump in for a second. In the first place, you're talking about this virus just in context of death. Death is just one of the problems that comes from it. In the population who survives, there have been respiratory issues. There's been nerve damage, brain damage. There's been a slew of problems like that as far as they know, could be lifelong. And then there's the hospital bills. Like, you're a Canadian, so you don't have to worry about this stuff. But for a lot of Americans, it's not that we're so much afraid of dying. We're afraid of ending up in the hospital and ending up with like $100,000 medical bill we can't pay that destroys our lives. It's kind of like, you know what? I don't fear death. I do fear surviving.
Okay.
It's kind of the attitude you get in America.
So should a mother be able to inject her 2-month-old fetus with the virus?
And so part of the problem too is we don't understand the virus in the context. It seems you can be reinfected. So what you're saying about the entire concept of antibodies, you build them and then we have a herd immunity. That apparently seems to not necessarily be true. We're not sure about that. So that's an issue. Like, a lot of what you're saying, it's like you're dealing with knowledge that we kind of had when it first started, but this is a new virus and it's developing and we're having to adapt as it goes along. So yeah, a lot of like your beliefs on it are they're outdated.
Well, the thing is, of the two of us, I can justify knowledge about this topic or any, and you can't. You have a vicious circle.
Well, you're not an expert on virology. You're not an expert.
No, what I'm saying is, of the two of us, I can.
He's seceding the point to me, basically. He's seceding the point every time he does that.
I just know this. I look at it this way. Look, again, I think we all agree. Sye can believe whatever he wants, right? Nobody can tell me that he has no right to believe what he wants. I get that, but when it's in practice, right? When his belief has translated into something where he can go to a congregation where there's hundreds of people, all not, social distancing, not wearing masks, where they get infected, they could somehow meet me at a supermarket, transmit it to me, get me sick, then I get my daughter sick. I've got a problem with this. Don't you think that I should?
Steve, somebody's asking.
Stay home. I have to go shopping for food. I mean, people have
to get somebody to deliver it.
So you're saying that I have to inconvenience myself to stay home because you decided to go to church and get sick.
If your health is my responsibility, then I'm going to stand outside McDonald's and slap the burgers out of your hand too.
I don't eat McDonald's, but still, I mean, I have to be able to go out and function. Your rights don't supersede mine to get me infected. I mean, if you want to stay home and then quarantine after yourself,
why don't I have the right to go out without a mask on?
Same reason why those 3 women who just went into New Zealand, or was it Australia, that lied on their visa saying that they had not been to a country that was in fact had the virus, or whatever they lied about, but they find out they did lie. I think 1 or 2 of them did have it. They're now looking at 5 years imprisonment. It's because there are reasons why they don't want people being exposed to this, and you're literally telling people, hey, you know what? I don't care, and that's fine. You can go expose yourself.
I care whether or not people lie. That's a sin.
All I care about is that person who goes to the church that willfully puts themselves in that situation, they self-quarantine for 14 days. I would have no problem with that. I guess that's their prerogative.
Churches every week.
And the interim, they stay home, right? Helios 5-7.
Miss church.
But in the interim,
so you're refusing to render under Caesar.
Helios
is not Caesar's, right? The worship service is not Caesar's; it's God's.
No, but
what
the
happens
mandate
outside of that worship service is Caesar. And if
Caesar's saying wear a mask.
Executive orders and laws saying if to wear a mask or you have to quarantine, then once you leave that service, your ability to have worship is no longer being impacted. And
Who is Caesar?
For us, it's the American government or it's the state level governor.
No, you're wrong. It's the Constitution.
Well, let me read this real quick. Helios, we got to start wrapping it up. I want to.
Whoa, wait a minute. Well, I'm sorry. Can we just address that? Because he's got a fundamental misunderstanding of how.
Yeah, then I'll get to the super chat. Go ahead.
Do you want to leave it? I mean, we can leave it, but that was wrong. But
let me the super chat, because then we'll decide where we want to go. I like to keep these things at 2 hours because they're digestible. Helios 575 for $10. I have no fear of death, but I also don't want to spread a plague to strangers, let alone those I love. If you're okay with spreading a plague just because you're not afraid of death, you are a monster. I think there's ethical considerations there. And again, we're exploring different positions. Sye's putting his on the table. I'm putting mine on the table. Philip's putting his on the table. We'll let people decide which they think is the morally correct way to go. But to me, I think as somebody who's a member of society, we have a responsibility not just to ourselves but to other people. And no faith, no belief in God should supersede that, because what you're doing is
No,
you're
but
saying.
the thing is, without a belief in God, you cannot justify that responsibility.
But absolutely, I can, and I
you
have.
can.
Absolutely,
Yeah,
I
you
can.
Why? Why shouldn't people
revelation.
die? Why shouldn't people die?
Sorry.
Well, you
Why
shouldn't go out of your. You shouldn't go get in a potential situation where the government has expressly said this is what we need to do to help all society, and you violate that.
Why not? Why shouldn't?
Because that's a moral obligation we have to be in society.
Okay, based on what standard?
Deontology.
Deontology.
Yeah,
Where do
duties
you get
and
the
responsibility.
standard of morality by which you say that that's
Because if the
unethical?
law is this, well, let's say they made a law that you must wear a mask, then you have a duty to wear a mask. That's just basic,
based on what standard? The law was
That-
that you could own
that is
slaves
the-
before.
No. But that is the ethical standard. The duty and responsibility, a deontological approach to ethics would be that we have a duty to obey the law. Right? It's
So was it
prescriptive at that
ethical?
point.
Was it ethical to own slaves?
Again, what aboutism? You keep,
No, it's a valid point. You're saying that the law is the standard of ethics. I'm showing you that it's not.
You don't see, but here's what you don't get. You don't always
God
have
is the
to.
standard of ethics.
You don't
not
always
the
have to
law.
apply to deontology. You don't have to always apply to duties and responsibility. I applied to virtue ethics one time. I applied to consequentialism. I'll take whatever works for me. Now I probably get crap
Right,
on for that, but
exactly.
whatever. But I look. I don't think there's any one set way of looking at ethics, right? But you can apply. I mean, you can appeal to deontology. But if somebody says, "Look, the law is wrong," then you go to a different ethics. You go to like virtue ethics. Why is this wrong? Why is slavery wrong? The law says you can have slaves, but you know what? Under virtue ethics or something other consequentialism or utilitarianism, it's wrong. That's how you argue these tensions between various ethical frameworks, right?
If you
because
can
not
jump
one of
from
them is
one
right.
standard to another, then people can arbitrarily stipulate a standard, and you have no argument against that.
Do you have one standard of ethics?
Yes.
And you're going to say God, but God's not a standard of ethics. That's not a theory of ethics. That's just a name.
No, God's nature and character are the standard of morality.
What theory of ethics is that? I've never heard of what that. Is that consequentialism? Is
Biblical.
That's not a theory of ethics. Though.
Christian.
Yeah, again, that's not a theory of ethics. All right.
No, it's a statement about how.
Yeah, it's a statement,
follow
right?
ethics,
It's just
yeah.
Yeah. But anyways, why don't you guys wrap this up?
Menchisms, by the way.
This mentions some.
Menchism, yeah.
You're a mensch. You're
Be a
wise. You're a wise man.
That covers everything pretty much.
Yeah. Be wise, and you're good to go, right?
Yeah.
All right. So
Somebody had a question.
Yeah, go
I
ahead.
said that we try to answer, but
All
it's gone. It's believe. I don't know if you have time. I'm sorry.
Yeah, we're kind of running out of it. Josiah for $5 says you shouldn't go out without a mask for the same reason dangerous bull owners in Exodus 21:29 were required to pen his bull, keep danger to yourself, because if the bull got loose, if I remember correctly, and gorged somebody, the person who owned the bull was morally responsible for it.
Yeah.
Wasn't the case. And by the way, I don't know the Bible, and
Like
I don't
I
even
said-
know how
like I said, the
remember
Jews
this.
are like the Jews don't have a
and
problem
oranges.
with this.
Apples and
Yeah.
oranges. We're talking about disease. I think if I have a car, I should also keep it in a safe condition so as not to harm other people. That's the parallel. When we're talking about disease, the mandate in Scripture was to quarantine the sick, not the healthy.
Yeah, but it's not apples and oranges.
And by the way, we know a lot more about.
Rabbis have no problem with taking that and extrapolating exactly what he's talking about. I was aware of that. So maybe if you as a Christian, it's a problem. For
Well, let me
a
ask
Jew
Sye
doing
real
that,
quick.
they have no problem with that. They actually have law that states it.
Sye,
Some Talmudic law. So.
Do you agree with this? And then we'll kind of wrap it up. Do you agree that we know more about vector transmission of diseases than any biblical person would have known? And maybe God,
I
maybe
think
God has
that's a
modified
fair- I think
something.
that's a fair statement.
Okay, so maybe God's saying to you, "Hey, look, don't be dumb, right? God, we've given you scientists, we've given you all this learned information, be a minch, and but you're just saying, you know what? I'm looking back the way God was 2,000 years ago, what He said 2,000 years ago, which you probably have to realize science has changed since then. We
There
understand
are
things a lot better.
there are no qualifiers in the command to gather for worship.
You don't think God?
I just-
So why doesn't God care if it's just virtual? I mean, is God so petty that virtual congregations don't work for
No,
him?
it's not a matter of pettiness. It's a matter of what God has ordained. There's many things that you cannot do virtually. And,
Why not?
I would say something like that. So if you had season tickets to go watch your football team and say, well, you can't go anymore, so you're going to pay the same
But
amount
this is
to watch
God.
it from home.
He's
to
got
watch it from home.
with 2 or 3
I-
under my name.
I'm sorry, but I find it
You can't
weird how he
baptize
does
virtually.
biblical
You can't have
interpretation.
communion virtually. It's hard to have accountability virtually. There's lots of things that you can't have in a virtual manner. You can't get the physical
A lot of
support
churches
your,
are doing
of
it.
your
They're just
brothers and sisters
fine.
in the Lord. There's many things that you cannot do virtually. I would say that it's not a church service.
You know, here's the thing, and I'll leave it, Phil. You can have it after. Look, if that's what you have for your church, and your church all catches COVID and they all die, you got to admit, I mean, it's not truly natural selection. But I mean, people are going to say, look, these are the groups of people that just they died, they're happy, they're with God. Now the rest of society moves on. Okay.
Well, listen, I know of a church, actually a local church. I know the pastor, and all of his congregants are elderly. 30 of them got COVID. Of the 30 that got COVID, of these elderly people, only 2 are hospitalized. And the 2 that were hospitalized were on the insistence of their family, but they didn't feel that they needed to be
But the point is, none of them should have
all
caught it.
And they all recovered. So I believe that,
and that's anecdotal, because other
the alarm bells that are going off about this virus,
other churches
madly overblown.
Other churches, 30 people got it, and many of them died. You know, so one church is not a fair sample size.
It's a provincial attitude.
Well, it's my first. It's my
well, it's a prophylactic type attitude, right? Prophylactic approach is that we want
knowledge, and death is not. Death is not the worst enemy.
But
it is for people who die unrepentant. So I can understand why you guys would.
But you want some preventative, right? You want it's a prophylactic, just like we want to have preventative type medicine. This is why we take.
I am not opposed to a reasonable preventative measure that do not contravene the Word of God.
It's mask. How does God's going to say this violates?
It is a reasonable.
This violates God's will.
I'm not opposed to anybody putting a mask on when they come to church. There are people in this church that do that, and I'm not opposed to them.
But you just don't think it should be mandated.
Mm-hmm.
You just don't think it should be mandated.
Correct.
Yeah, I think that's weird. But let me read these real quick. Josiah Hansen, $5.
We're American.
Sye, he's Canadian.
I'm not American.
How would it?
I know you're not. That's my point. It's a weird attitude to have from somebody who's Canadian. But then again,
Josiah
I have Canadian
says,
relatives, so I know they can be weird.
Sye, how would a gourd dude answer when you asked, "Do you feel ill?" I mean, the guy that's got gourd, he's not going to care the reasoning behind it. He just knows a bull got out and the owner was responsible for it. If you catch something and because of somebody else's negligence, because they didn't take the proper precautions, there's an ethical negligence to be had there. And Little Red,
you answered for Sye
it's a false equivalency. It's not talking about disease.
Little Red, little sticker for $2. Thank you, Little Red. By the way, if you haven't checked out Little Red's channel, go do so. She's got a new channel now. I love promoting other channels.
You never promoted my channel.
I didn't know you had one. Well, go ahead. Shill your
go
stuff
look
now.
at my channel where I don't do shit anymore.
Shill your stuff and give me the link, and I'll put it in the video description. And then we'll let Sye have the last word, if that's okay.
It's I will do it just for the heck of it. Yeah. You never know. I might start making videos again. I might go insane and do it.
We'll take 2 minutes. Like I said, I want to give Sye the last word.
Sure.
Oh, you mean right now?
No. Yeah. We got to wrap it up. So I'm gonna have Philip go, and then.
Could you? I'm hunting for the link. You want to let him go first?
I can understand how people watch this think I'm obstinate. I'd encourage you to go to my Answer Anyone YouTube channel. Watch the last discussion that I had with your friendly neighborhood atheist. Watch some of the other discussions that I've had.
He's a nice guy, right?
Yeah, he seems to be a nice fellow.
Nice guy.
Now this was a little bit different. This was a challenge of worldviews, and of course we did get into some other topics. But the point of the matter is. The point of the matter is that neither Steve nor Phil, I would believe, and I think that this shows, especially with Phil anyways, can justify the foundations for the worldview. And of course, the reason that I would say for that is because they're not saved. Jesus Christ did not only die to save souls for eternity, he died to save reasoning now. And I would encourage Phil and Steve, and I actually, Steve, I want you to know that I pray for you often. I pray for you regularly. And I pray that God opens your eyes so that you guys can come to know the peace which passes all understanding, that you can put your trust in Jesus Christ, who died for sinners like you and me, that you can have peace with him, and that you don't need to fear the death that so many people are fearing now.
Yeah, I got no problem with people praying. I had this argument with somebody one time, and I didn't say who it was because I just think he's morally reprehensible, godless engineer, who basically, I said, if somebody's dying and they want comfort, or they want you to pray with them, or they're praying, would you pray with them? And he's like, no. And I'm like, dude, look, I mean, it's a matter of respect. If somebody's going to pray for you and wish you well-being, that's just their way of saying, hey, well wishes to you. That's just a Christian's way of doing it. I find nothing offensive about people praying for somebody. I don't know why atheists get all butthurt when they say, well you pray for me, I'll think for you. I think that's silly. I don't understand.
Mischaracterization of what I think prayer is not a good sentiment. God answers prayer.
Yeah. But I'm just saying that it doesn't bother, I just I think there's a lot of rude responses when people say, God bless you, or I'll pray for you.
I debated this fellow, and he was offended at the fact that I said I was praying for him. I said,
I don't get that.
Would you be offended if I said I'm going to ask Santa Claus for presents for you?
Yeah, it's
just. Of course, you wouldn't be.
Yeah,
I think the fact that they're offended at the fact that I would pray for them, exposes.
But why take offense? Yeah, why would take offense to that? It's just like, instead of saying, look, as a non-believer, somebody says, look, I'm sending you well wishes. We all mean it. This is our empathy. We're showing compassion and empathy because we feel for people. When somebody has a tragedy, we know what it's like to have a tragedy. It sucks, and we act actual empathy. Why? Because we're not sociopaths. But anyways, I was going to give you last word, but you already had it, so I guess we got to give Philip. Is that cool?
I'm fine with that.
What if you're doing that Southern style of I'll pray for you?
Oh, that bless your heart.
Yeah, bless your heart.
Yeah, that means they think you're an
you.
idiot.
It's pretty clear what they're saying.
Yeah,
it's like
it
they're using those other.
I had a Southern person say that to me not too long ago, and I'm
Yeah,
like, damn,
yeah.
because I messed up too. I knew it was my fault.
I gotta say, I love it when they do that.
Yeah,
It's
so
like,
cute. Go ahead, wrap it up, man.
Yeah, I'm good.
You good?
I mean, I said everything I had to say, and
All
I
right.
think I made the point I had to make. So,
If you were good, I wouldn't need to be here.
Oh, shots fired.
Oh God!
Guess there's going to be a part 2, right? All right, ladies. Thank you guys. This was actually entertaining. Sye, always a pleasure, man. We'll get you back on. You know what? We might do like when you have free time, more stuff like this. I got a lot of stuff coming up, a lot of things we got planned. I'm still doing Caffeine Corner 11 o'clock on Mondays. Go check that out with Cheshire. I've still got 8 o'clock Pacific time on Wednesdays with Chris Attlee, atheist pastor. We're doing Over and Under politics, which is great. Fridays, I'm doing some controversy stuff. I'm just picking a controversy topic and running with it. Saturdays, we got Rum and Coke. This Saturday, we have a content creator meeting, I think. A super secret, don't tell anybody, content creator meeting with a bunch of people from various groups that we're going to try to incorporate and just kind of have a fun Rum and Coke, 7 o'clock Pacific time. Sye, you're invited. We're not going to, no presup, no epistemology, just fun. But with that, guys, thank you guys for much for joining us. I'm looking forward to the comments on this. If there's anything really good, I'll send it Sye's way. But leave us some comments what you think. Pro, con. The only thing I ask is be a little respectful. Look, I mean, since Sye is a friend, I don't like people insulting him for no reason. I disagree with him. He knows that, right? And I know he can obfuscate. But don't go after him sideways. If you really got an issue with his epistemology and the way he presents these arguments, which I do it in a way that go, hey, look, this is why I think you're wrong. I'm going to show you why you're wrong, and then use some logic and reason and go from there. Is that fair?
Yeah.
All
Be
right.
nice to him like I was. Hey.
We're out.